Hey everyone, welcome to Pink Spots. As you can see, today in the studio I have my friend and some of your friend, Hilary. Hi Hilary, welcome
Hello.
to the show. So today our much anticipated topic is friendships and specifically friendship breakups and how much they suck. You all expressed a lot of interest in this topic. I went out on Instagram and Facebook and asked you for your own stories, and a lot of you submitted some really intense stories about friendship breakups that you've been through yourself. But I think today first, before we get into the breakup part of friendships, Hilary and I wanted to talk about friendships as an adult and how they can kind of change over time and what they look like as you get older, because I think that also feeds into how we experience friendship breakups as an adult. So my friend, where should we start?
Well, I don't know. I feel like I was thinking of this earlier. I was feeling like we both have very different like friendship journeys too. And then I was
Yeah,
thinking
we do.
the way that like how every single person's relationship with their friends is different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like the way I am with my friends could be totally different from the way someone else is with their friends. And I thought about this idea of like intimacy a lot and
Oh, I
how
love that.
some friends are like very affectionate, physically affectionate with each other, and then some friends just like I keep seeing these TikToks like this is my best friend for 20 years and we've never hugged. This is our first hug.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's just crazy how different friendships can be.
So what do you think, how would you describe, I guess, your friendship landscape? What does it look like for you now? And has it changed for you, since you were younger?
Yeah, I had a major kind of change in high school. So up until that point, I was very shy. I just kind of,
You? That's so cute.
I was so shy, so nervous,
Aw.
um, and just so quiet. Like, I didn't go to my way to talk to people at all. And so I just kind of fell in with one group and stayed with that group until grade 10. And then in grade 11, I was just sitting in class with these girls who I knew they're my acquaintances, but we weren't really good friends. And we started bonding over this really like cute boy that had made me a mix CD, like honest. Um,
Aw.
and they were like, "Oh my god!" And anyways, so I started hanging out with them, and they were like very different from my other friend group. They went out and they like did things, and they were always together, hanging out outside of school, which
Mm.
I had never like experienced that level of friendship before. And even like I always thought to myself like I wish I had a friend that I could just go over to their house and like open their fridge because like that's what you see in like movies and TV
Mm.
shows and stuff. And then these friends were those, and I just opened up, like I just blossomed at that point, and that was when I really came out of my shell. And we have been best friends for 12 years, and the four of us are just as solid as ever. And so I've only really have those like two main kind of
Mm-hmm.
friend groups, I guess. And I've had people come in and out, obviously, but I feel very, very, very grateful and very lucky for the group I have right now.
That's incredible to find that kind of connection with people. I think I probably had maybe a similar start when I was younger, where I typically would have maybe one very close friend and then almost no other friends at all. I always was like very by myself, very quiet, very shy, very awkward, so awkward. um, and unfortunately, I like from high school, I entered into a relationship with someone who is pretty controlling. And so that length of time where I didn't really have a significant social group was extended probably into my mid 20s, where I still would maybe have like a best friend. I had someone I was close to, but I wasn't really able to kind of spread my wings and get that sort of like openness that you seem to be describing. Um, and you know what? Honestly, like I don't think it was. I had two different, I guess, like other experiences where in my 30s I organized a vegan meetup group locally. And from that, I suddenly had like this giant group of like 15 to 20 friends. And at first, it was really great and felt cool. Like if it was your birthday, you'd have like 20 people at your birthday party, like your birthday dinner or something, which for me was like, oh my God, I'm so popular.
Yeah.
I'm so famous. But the problem there was that the bond we had ended up being more superficial than I realized at first. You feel like you're bonded over something like veganism, and that would be a tight bond. But over time, it became clear that our politics were very different. And, things that like, I don't want to say that veganism doesn't matter, but like things that really matter started to fall apart. Like I remember, for instance, there was one friend that I was probably Callie and I were both like the closest with, her and her husband, and she would just do a lot of stuff that I didn't like. So I would try to set a boundary, and she was the type of person that once I set a boundary, she would start doing it more. So it was just stuff like that, and there was just no conflict resolution in the group. It was just really difficult. So that kind of fell apart. And then I was sort of like, you know, low friendship group for a while. And then it was really when I started doing this show and meeting people online that I sort of came into this second wave of finding people to connect with. And Fortunately, some friendships have come and gone, but I've seemed to have collected, like now I have a group where it's the four of us and we're very close and it feels really safe. And we talk a lot about how like we probably will be friends forever. You never know what's going to happen, but it just feels like it's built on a foundation of, like we've been friends for years and things are really good and we have really good communication. So it's so nice to have that. And it really does help like open you up to the world in certain ways that I just think you can't get if you don't feel Mexi's like, yeah. Mexi's part of my group. But yeah, it's interesting to go from that experience because when you, like my heart did a little ooh when you talked about wanting to be able to just open someone's fridge, because I always wanted that too. I was like, I want to feel like I can just go grab a drink or something and that's okay. And yeah, I just grew up pretty isolated and didn't have that for a long time. And it is really nice to have that with people.
It is.
So, I think like one of the things that I had in my notes, the outline that we put together, is how, for me, I think it's different for you because it sounds like I think your friends are physically close to you, or no?
Yeah. I have one friend a few hours away in the group, but I feel like this might be interesting to talk about too. Some friendships really like prosper only like in social settings when you're physically with each other. But I find my friend group almost like does better in our group chat. Like it's just, it works. And we
That's
see
great.
like maybe like once a month or something.
Yeah.
Two of them live 10 minutes away from me. We still just do most of our catching up and talking on our group chat.
I think that's really, this whole quarantine situation has been really interesting because, I have my two friends that were local. One of them just moved away. But, we had been used to a big bond for us was physically getting together and playing board games. And when the quarantine hit last year, we just stopped hanging out and we honestly kind of just stopped talking a lot. And then when Sarah went to move away, we realized like we don't want our friendship to fall apart. So we started being more intentional about using Marco Polo and texting. And we just started doing a board game simulator to play board games together virtually. And it's actually awesome. And we were amazed at how much we felt like we really were hanging out with each other the first time we did it. So yeah, it's been interesting to just kind of see like how do relationships work with this new dynamic. And I think, also like Mexi and I have only ever known each other virtually. So, and we're super close. Whereas with other people, yeah, it's like you kind of have to be in person or else you just can't really sustain it.
Yeah.
And I think that ties into like something that I've really struggled with is, and it's funny because I'm someone who doesn't need to necessarily hang out with people often, but I really miss the casualness of youth. I miss the ability to just sort of like go to someone's house, or I miss even my best friend when I was in my late teens, early 20s. Like she and I ended up being roommates for a while, and I miss like the casualness of just us both coming home and we would watch Cold Case Files all night, and we would like make each other dinner. And I just really miss that. The last time I went home and I visited her, there was a lot of pressure on what are we going to do? And she like planned all this stuff that we could go do. And I was like, the best time I had with her during that trip was one night, me, her, and her husband ended up getting a little tipsy and watching Antiques Roadshow. And I was like, this is all I wanted. I just wanted to be chill, And I feel like as an adult, that's really hard. I feel like it's hard to just have that like very casual, like even I wanted to watch Promising Young Woman with my buddies. And it's like with time zone differences and all this stuff, it like, we couldn't just like watch a movie. And I really miss that a lot.
Yeah, I even two of my friends came over we were all really craving soft pretzels, so we made soft pretzels.
I love
and
that.
we watched Love Island, and we just watched like 2 episodes, and then like I remember this feeling of like, do we keep watching? Like, are they just gonna go home now, or like I don't like it's kind of my bedtime, so like I don't know.
Yeah, you need to go.
But that's so different when you were an adult. I feel like that really changes. Like
Yeah.
before, we all binge the whole season like all night, but now it's like I couldn't imagine doing that with my friends right now.
Yeah. Like, honestly, it occurred to me that I don't think you and I would be close if we hadn't, like, as close if we hadn't met at the Animal Rights Conference, because you walked up to the table to just say whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, come have lunch with us. And then we just ended, with Maddie, we ended up just like palling around the whole weekend. And we got to have that like very casual sort of time together where it's just like, oh, we're all in one place for a few days. So like, let's stay up late. Let's, do whatever we want. And I just think that was such an incredible opportunity, because you're someone I really enjoy having in my life. And I think we probably would have connected online at some way, but it just wouldn't have been the same, Like, that's such a bonding experience. And we've been able to do that at other time. Well, I think at least one other time, where it's like, oh, I'm here, let's meet up and let's just like hang out and eat takeout and like chat. Yeah. And it's so nice. And I just wonder, like, what else am I missing out on that you just can't do that? Even just to call someone and be like, I'm bored, and have them be like, I'm bored too. And it's like, well, let's be bored together. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel very lucky because I live in the East Coast of Canada, and so our COVID situation, it has not been even close to other parts of the world. And like I guess this past summer for us, it felt like a totally normal summer because masks weren't even like mandated. We could hang out in groups up to 20 and down to groups of 10 now, but still like that is such a privilege. And I feel like there are so many friendships and relationships struggling because of that. And I just feel so grateful that like life hasn't really changed a ton here for us, which is such a privilege. And I think like when we went through that short period here at the beginning of quarantine, we all kind of started being like, oh my God, like, how is this going to change our friendships? And like, since we don't even have the option of going out anymore, we like really, I think we like try to put it online too much. Like we just try too hard because it was like, we have to all be playing things online and doing these things. And that's totally understandable for those of you who are still doing the quarantine life. And I can't imagine. I feel so lucky.
Yeah, it has been. It's so weird to just think about, because I think part of my struggle, if you will, or I think just the struggle of friendships as an adult is like career stuff getting in the way too. Because with my bestie Sarah, in 2019, I was incredibly busy. I was traveling all over the place. I was super burnt out, and my work schedule is so intense that I was like, I have to just work. I can't really focus on anything else. So I didn't really see my friends, and specifically her, that much in 2019. And then in 2020, it flipped where she was super busy. And I mean, she was always generally busy anyway, but then the quarantine hit, and she's in retail. So she was like, I don't want to put you at risk because I'm around customers all day.
Right.
And then her and her husband decided they had had enough of capitalism. I'm so proud of her. And she ended up selling her house and moving to somewhere cheaper. And she's like just gonna chill and kind of, you know, figure it out, which I think is really cool. But you know, I kind of was like thinking about this episode. I was sort of processing this idea that, first of all, it's just, you know, this idea that your job would take up so much time that you can't invest that in the people that you care about. But then also this idea that, I don't know, it's kind of like almost weird to me in a way that you don't, I don't know how to say this without sounding like a weirdo. Let me think about it. It's just kind of like, it was really sad for me that we had so much time apart and that she had decided to have more time, but somewhere else. And I know why, because the cost of living here is so high that they felt like we need to go, you know, we need to go somewhere else. And she's always like, move up here, like come up here with us. But you know what I mean? It's just like this whole, it's like you have more time now, but I'm not there. So we're still apart. And it just feels really sad. And she expresses that too, that it's really sad. She's like, it's so, because she was such a little career woman and, you know, just was always busy and in charge of stuff and being Miss Manager. And then like she'll Marco Polo me from bed and just be like, it's 1 o'clock, I'm still in bed, hi, how are you? And I'm like, who is this person? And I just think it's so adorable. And I'm like, if it wasn't COVID, if like we didn't live apart, this could be a situation where I could just come over and be like, hey, let's like be bored together today, or let's go on some little adventure. So I don't know. I don't think there's a real point there, but it just was something I was thinking about, where I think for a lot of people, your friends are people that you care about, but they're not people you make life decisions around. And I'm finding that for myself, like I do feel like I would make life decisions around my friends. And that's something that's been very hard for me over my whole lifetime, is understanding constantly that like no matter how close I am to someone, at some point it's going to be like, oh, well, I'm going to move with my husband somewhere, or I'm going to go do this thing, and I'm just supposed to accept that as like, all right, that's just what you're doing. I mean, of course, like I want people to do what they want to do, but it's just always struck me as a little weird that it's like, but I'm a key core relationship in your life. And, you know, I've had people tell me that they're moving like it's just this decision they already made, you know, instead of like, oh, I'm thinking about it and, you know, this is going to like really change our relationship. And I don't know.
Yeah, I have never really thought about how friendships aren't really considered in those decisions.
Because you consider your family and you obviously consider your significant other, but I feel like you don't consider your friends in the same way. Yeah.
No, you really don't. And when I was in my early 20s, I met this guy. I moved to Florida, and I didn't like think about, like I moved to Florida with the intentions of staying there. Crazy.
I'm like, be polite, don't laugh.
No, like, no. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway. And so.
Wait, where did you meet him?
On Instagram, bitch.
Oh my god. Did you?
Oh, that's a long story.
Oh, you will have to tell me the story sometime.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in Florida.
Yeah, so I just kind of like up and left to Florida, and it was heartbreaking because I'm so close with my family. And because I have such a good relationship with my friend group online, I didn't really consider that. But when I got there, that's when I felt it, because I was like, I'm in Florida. I know nobody except my boyfriend, and I don't want to hang out with him 24/7. Like, I couldn't work, so I couldn't really meet people. It was tough. Like, it was really tough. And I think it wasn't the whole reason that we broke up and I came back, but it definitely played a huge part. Like, if I had my own community there, I don't think I would have felt so pressured in my relationship to make it work.
Yeah, so I was dating that person who was controlling, and he ended up joining the Air Force in our mid-20s. And the plan was that he was going to get through boot camp, and then we were going to get married, and I was going to live on base with him. And I realized, like, what the fuck are you doing? Because I'm like, exactly that. Like, this relationship is already so isolating, but at least here you have, you know, some friends, you have your job, like you have some ties here. If I go live on a fucking military base where the average age of the people we're going to be around is like 18 or 19, and they're all like, I'm going to be hanging out with like military wives. Please, can you imagine?
No.
Yeah. And a lot of these bases are like out in the middle of nowhere. So it's, you know, I would probably same like have a hard time finding a job and have a hard time like having any kind of social life. But it was like not even a question to me at the time that of course I was going to do that, you know? And now I'm like, I just want to live with my friends. I just, like, we talk about it all the time. Like, where can we move in the world? Because we're, like, international. So it's like, where can we, you know, you and me too, where can we move in the world where we can all afford to live and we can be close to each other, but not too close so we can still have our space. And it's funny that we all talk about this, and it's really nice now because a few of my friends have significant others that they're, you know, very serious about, but we still like include each other in these like fantasy plans that we have, which I think is really sweet.
That is sweet.
Yeah, I love that for us. Okay, so somewhat relatedly, and you may not identify with this, but I have something that I need to get off my chest, so you can let me know if you relate or not. So I am someone who is essentially orphaned by abuse, if you will. You know, I'm someone who has no family due to needing to cut them off because they were terrible. I also experienced, I guess this fits on the topic too, when I was in middle school, my parents moved us from Massachusetts to New Hampshire. And that was really hard for me because I actually did have like a really good, tight community in Massachusetts. I lived in this like really bad area of some shitty city. And all of us neighborhood kids were like really tight with each other. And when we moved to New Hampshire, I feel like everyone had grown up together since like kindergarten or even preschool. And so it was really hard. It just felt like everyone already had their friends, and I just felt so alone and outside of everything. So I got really depressed and had a very hard time with that. Where was I going with that? Oh, so anyway, you know, so my family life sucked as well. So even before I actually like left my family, I was that kid who friends would bring home, and I was like this ragamuffin little kid who like people could tell that my parents didn't take care of me, you know? And I would often like my friends, because of this, my friends would often invite me to like family holiday stuff, or their parents would tell me like, if you need anything, let me know and we'll help you. And a lot of times people would say I was family, but here's my rant. At the same time, then I wouldn't be invited to like family events or actually included as a family member. And often, like, I don't ask for help ever, but I did go through this really, really hard time when I was 19 and I needed a place to live for just a few months. And, you know, I finally reached out and I was like, hey, like, I do need some help. And everyone was like, yeah, about that. It was like, I just wanted to feel good by saying it. I didn't actually want you to take me up on it. And so that has always been really hard for me, is like people often tell me that I'm family to them. And I do think that there's a large amount of, I don't know how to put this, but it's almost like I'm a stray cat or dog. And people are like, oh, isn't this cute of us to adopt her? but I'm not actually like integrated into their actual family. So I just feel constantly rejected and confused. And this is probably the autism too, of like, I'm very literal about things. So I'm like, well, if we're family, then we're family. But this happened to me, like my friend had a housewarming party, and I was like, she told me about it after, and I was like, oh, you did? And she's like, oh, well, it's just family. And I was like, well, I couldn't come. Like, aren't I? Yeah. So it's, I know your family's like awesome. So I know this is probably maybe something you can't relate to, but it's been something I want to put out there for the other, people in the world who are strays. Cause I think, yeah, people almost fetishize us a little bit, where it's like, it's cute to like take care of the stray, but then when like it comes down to it, you're not family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's sad.
It is sad. It sucks. And I know for some, I mean, it does happen sometimes where people do genuinely take someone in as family. It's just rare, and I've noticed people will throw that word around a lot more easily than they should. Because I think, especially to someone who literally doesn't have family and doesn't have support, it's a pretty serious thing to say.
Yeah.
It's like a bit of a commitment almost. And I think people just like have, yeah, I just think they have these romanticized ideas about like, oh, it's fun to say we're family, and then, but also like, you're not invited to the wedding, bye.
Yeah.
Well, I think a good segue topic is, I think you wrote here, longtime friends hitting different milestones at different points in their life, and how that can change the dynamic, and that possibly could lead us into the topic of friendship breakups and how much they suck.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell us your thoughts on that?
Yeah. In my friend group, like I met my partner a few years ago, and like we're really settling down and doing all the adult shit, and so is another one.
Owning chickens, or living with chickens, we'll say.
And another one of my friends like is engaged, and she just like started her own business, and our other two friends are very very successful like in school and work, but I feel like the romantic aspect of our lives are very different. And I found that especially in terms of like going out for a night and like partying, it's like it's different now.
Yeah.
It's so different. I'm like, we're going out at 11, like
yeah, no.
But it's still fun. Like they love to like hear about my boring ass life, and I love to hear about their like single adventures that I like am low key jealous of. But it's just interesting. Like I feel like sometimes if one friend is kind of stuck in a certain place, and I'm grateful this isn't really our scenario, but I've had other kind of like more so acquaintances, I guess, that this has happened where they've kind of just like they're not getting over a certain hump in their life, or they're really like stuck in a certain place, and then I kind of like keep on moving, or vice versa. And then that like you said can just kind of be the reason that a lot of friendships crumble.
Yeah, I think that definitely played a part in my most famous breakup, because there was definitely, sorry, Mexie distracted me with her unconditional love.
Oh.
Yeah, no, but there was definitely a really, it's so hard because it's like I've been stuck so many times in my life, and I've been in like bad places and kind of unable to get out of it, and I've felt judged by other people, so it's like you never want to do that to someone else. But it can, I also kind of understand it now, because it can get to a point where you're like, I just can't be in this with you anymore. Especially when like you're so, I don't know. It's like you become part of that stuckness. I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but it's like you're almost part of that stuck identity because it's like, oh, if we're both stuck, then I don't have to feel bad. Or if I put you in a position where you're kind of reinforcing that this is not my fault, or, you know, you just kind of get like sucked into this person's like stuck identity. And then you're kind of like, I can't wear this mantle for you anymore. I need things to change. It can be
Yeah.
really hard, but you feel like an asshole because you're like, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to make someone feel bad about their situation, but I just can't do it.
100%. I think, a few of my relationships that kind of were in that sort of stuck identity were because of just like partying. Like, I lived in Toronto for a
Yes.
year and I didn't really know anybody. And so you meet people by going out and drinking and partying. And so that's what I was always doing. And then these people that I met, especially just one particular friend, um, like we got along so well. And then I started to realize, like, kind of down the line in the friendship, was that for her, it was about the partying.
Mm-hmm.
There was never meant to be anything more than that to the friendship. She would call me up on like a Friday night or whatever to go out, and I'd be like, yeah, sure. But then when I'd call her on like a Sunday afternoon for lunch, like she'd be like, oh no, I can't. And then I kind of realized, like, okay, like like I really want a friend in the city, and she just like really loves having a fun girl to party with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that friendship ended in a ball of flames, pretty
God.
pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's
But
amazing how often alcohol is involved in these kinds of situations. Because
yeah,
that was the thing too for me is like as I was trying to be more and more serious about addressing my health issues, you know, alcohol is a thing that's like really bad for me. And so I would go through dry periods where I'm like, I'm just not drinking. You know, I'm trying to do a thing. And it's amazing how much that would impact the dynamic. And I was like, well, this isn't healthy. You know, if this is going to so negatively impact our dynamic, then what are we doing, you know?
yeah. I I did like a few years ago. I just stopped drinking for like 1 or 2 years, and it was
Mm-hmm.
mainly influenced by the fact that I just hated hangovers more than I liked being intoxicated. So I just stopped. um, and it was kind of like a challenge to myself too, like how long will this go for or whatever. But I saw even the closest friendships in my life change a bit because of that, and not drastically, and not in ways that couldn't be um, repaired. Just I would get invited out less.
Mm-hmm.
Even if my friends knew I'd say no, you still want the invite.
Of course.
Like you
That's
still
the introvert's mantra. It's like,
yeah.
I'm going to say no 90% of the time, but I want you to invite me.
Yes, this is me too. My friends know like I don't really like live music. It's kind of like a shitty personality trait, but I just don't. Um,
I think our friendship was just damaged. Just kidding.
I just love dancing, and I love really particular kinds of music. And so if I feel like I can't dance to something, then I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to be there.
But you can just do the white person sway.
I hate it.
Isn't that satisfying?
Like I'm gonna pay $10 to just like pretend to have a good time. Like, but
That's
I
so
still
funny.
can't. So
I actually love live music, but I hate how late it all starts. And I
Mhm.
hate how much standing around there is. So I would
Yeah.
have similar. I dated one person who was like a live music junkie, and he was just constantly dragging me out at like 9 or 10 p.m. on like a Tuesday. And I'm like, dude, I cannot do this. I can't do it. So
No,
anyway, I respect it. I respect it.
I'm really outing myself here
You are.
for the whole world to know.
This is going to be Pink Spot's first scandal. I platformed a person who doesn't like live music.
Yeah,
yeah. I think that's good though. I think it's cool. And that's the thing is like, as I've gone on in my life, because I used to be very kind of rigid when I was younger, and I learned to like chill, as I got older. And one of the best things I think I learned over time was just how to see someone for what they can offer you and to just really enjoy that versus like thinking that everyone has to have the same exact hobbies or whatever, right? Like I have friends who will binge an entire season of a show with me, and that's awesome. But they may not be the friends who want to go to yoga class with me or whatever. They may not be friends who want to travel. I'm very much stereotyping here, but I just learned like it's okay. And I mean, it's okay if like some of that stuff prevents you from getting super close. But I just think, I felt so much pressure from people to have to be into the same things that they're into. That was a big part of that like giant friend group as well, because it was the meetup that I organized was oriented around food, and it became very expensive because we were doing potlucks like all the time. And it also was just very triggering and difficult for me with like, eating disorders and stuff, to just like, we would get together and they would just talk about food the entire time. And I would be like, hey, I watched a cool movie the other night. And they'd be like, so anyway,
Yeah.
Tofuti, can you even believe it? And I'd be like, ugh. And it was also strangely very capitalist, because they were all like obsessively talking about new vegan products all the time. And so it's almost like when you have friends who watch a lot of media, guilty, and you don't, and you're like, you almost feel this pressure, like you need to start watching media because that's all they're talking about. That's how I felt, is like we had to constantly go out to the newest vegan restaurant. We had to try the newest vegan product because that's what they would be talking about. So it was just, and I tried to start connecting with them one-on-one and be like, well, do we have something else in common that we could just like focus on that? But no. But then they started to have very liberal politics that I was discovering, and I was like, never mind.
Gotta go.
Not for me. Yeah.
That sort of reminded me of something that you talked about a bit that I really related to in the first episode of Pink Spots. When you were saying how, like, in friendships or just relationships, like, you find yourself, like, bending kind of for the other person, or kind of molding who you are based off what they need, and always kind of like micromanaging the friendship without anyone asking you to. Like from when, like, since I was very small, my mom always used to tell me, like, Hilary, you're a chameleon. You're just such a chameleon. No matter what group you're in, you just fit in with them. And like, it was meant as a compliment, but I don't think that's really a good thing. It can't always be a good thing, I guess, because you just become the people you're with, and it's not authentic. And I didn't really know who I was for a really long time, and I still find myself doing that. But I think it's those friendships that last that you don't have to have this particular bond. You don't have to kind of find the similarity and hang on to it, when you can just both be individuals in yourself and then also friends. That's where the longevity of the relationship comes from.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it is hard when you don't really know yourself yet. I'm also like that. I'm like very good at being a chameleon. And I would find myself, when I was younger, like I would be around women at work, and I would find myself talking about like shopping. And I'm like, what is happening right now? Like I'm not not that I never talk about shopping, but like it's just not what I do. But I was falling into these kind of tropes of like, oh, women at work, like we talk about shopping. And yeah, it was just really hard. And, you know, as I got older and I got to know myself better, I find I can kind of bend social situations to my personality more now. Like I can kind of guide the conversation in a way where it feels more authentic, but it was really hard to do when I was younger. I just
Really hard.
yeah, and then you walk away and you just feel kind of like I don't know. Like you're like, okay, I guess that interaction went well, but like also who was that? What was I doing?
You don't get anything fulfilling out of it for yourself.
No.
And that might be a good segue into friendship breakups because that's pretty much what happened with mine.
Do tell.
Sit down. No.
Grab your popcorn.
Like so basically I met this person like a few years back, and I met her during like a very trying and traumatic time in her life when she was dealing with difficulties with pregnancies. And so I became such a support for her, and that was the base of our foundation, was her troubles with her pregnancy. And that was like fine for me. Like I was more than happy to be that support for her, and I enjoyed being that support for her, and I wanted to be. And so anyways, she got pregnant, she had a baby. The baby was premature, so she was in the hospital for a little while, and I used to like, you know, drive out and to another province to go visit her, like, and so I really made the effort. Like I was very much there for her. And then when she came back home and the baby was fine and growing up, and I just felt like, I don't know, I felt like every time we hung out, when things were okay in her life, it still revolved around her because, and this is fault of my own too, but because our friendship was never about me in the first place, because I was always that huge support for her. And I didn't realize until very late, like later, like why I felt like that. Like I would just leave our friendship or our hangouts and just be like, why am I so drained? Like, and why do I like, I just started to dread seeing her. And like, if I knew we were hanging out on a certain day, I would purposely like plan that week so that I could have the most amount of energy to go hang out with her just for a few hours. And the whole conversation would just revolve around, you know, her life. And that's totally fine. Like, I'm a very good listener, but I just didn't understand. Like, I would just leave feeling so empty. And I didn't really know why. And that's when I kind of realized, like, our friendship was never balanced to begin with. And what I realized too is that I didn't want to find the balance. And when I realized that, when I realized I did not want to find the balance, that's when I knew I had to end the friendship. It just got to a point where like I was psyching myself up so much just to hang out with her, and it was brutal. Like, I don't know if you've been in a situation where like someone's just like ranting at you. And you're like, okay, so what's new in your life? Tell me what's new. What's going on? And then my mind is just like blank. I'm like, this is not organic at all.
No.
Like, I don't know what's happening with me.
I fucking hate when I'm talking to someone and I can tell that they're like, I've been talking for a while. I should.
Yes.
You know, but you know that it's not sincere. It's literally like, I just don't want to look like a bad guy, so let me ask one question and then I'll get back to talking about myself. I hate that.
Yeah.
It's so awkward because I'm the same way. Like, I don't need to talk about myself, believe it or not. I know everyone here probably won't believe that. But in real life, I really don't need to talk about myself. So I'm like you, like I can be a good listener. I can just chill. But it's like, I don't want to have a fake interaction. And I don't want to be talking about myself when the other person's like clearly not listening or caring. And I find that those people tend to just not give me what I need emotionally when I'm talking anyway. Like, they're the type of people who'll be like, well, but at least this didn't happen to you.
Oh my God.
Or
Yes.
like, oh yeah, like that happened to me, but like way worse. And you're just like, all right, I guess I'll just go fuck myself then.
I specifically remember this one, hang out with this one friend, and she did the thing where she was like, so what's new? What's going on? Tell me about your life. And so I just like pulled this thing out of thin air that was the first thing that popped into my head, which is like a kind of small little argument between me and my partner. And at the end of my story, I was like venting for like maybe a minute. I get very self-conscious if I realize I'm talking for more than like 2 minutes straight. But anyway, so I like stopped the story, and then she was just like, if that's your only problem. And I was like,
wow.
It was, and then you just feel embarrassed because you're like, well, fuck me then. Like,
yeah.
Why do I bother?
Shit like that puts me on 10 immediately. And I'm just like, listen, okay, any relationship I have in my life, not any relationship, but if I'm friends with someone and also if I'm dating someone, and I would assume family from what I hear, a lot of your primary job in my life is to just care about the little shit, right? Like, I'm not expecting everyone on the internet or everyone at my job or whatever to care about the little stuff, but like, that's why you have people in your life that you're close to. Is like, oh my God, my friend Sarah and I, we used to have a weekly date where we would go have vegan sushi together, and then we would do yoga. And it was like my favorite thing in the whole world. And you should have seen, first of all, people always thought we were a couple because we're like so madly in love with each other. And we would like, whenever we would see each other, it was like the first time we had seen each other in years, even though it was like weekly at least. But point being is like, we would get together and we would just like talk about every little detail of our lives, just such inconsequential stuff. But we were like both like invested, you know, like I really cared about, I would like ask her questions like, oh my God, what happened at that meeting you had to hold? Or like, I would know she had to reprimand an employee. And it was like, you know, I would be like, how did that go? Or they were changing to a new point of sale system at her stores and like also opening a new store at the same time. It was like crazy. So every week I would be like, oh my God, like, is the system working? How is like, did you get this like thing fixed? And she would do the same for me, you know, and it was so wonderful. And I just think like there's so many people in the world where it's like you have to have some crazy story, or they're like, why are you telling me this? And it's like, because you're my fucking friend. It's your job to give a shit about, you know, my presentation at work the other day. Or whatever. Yes. So anyway, yes, very much relate to that. And I don't know if you've had this experience as well, but something that took me a really long time to realize. So there's this interesting thing when you just constantly have like a slight sense of unease with someone and you can never really pinpoint it. And I think one of the reasons that I felt this way with a certain person is that there was a lot, like we would have that where it was a lot of like share all these little details and constantly checking in with each other. But then it was kind of almost the opposite situation. Like then when like big, actually important things would happen, suddenly that sense of support wasn't there. And I was like, this is interesting, you know, especially because the narrative within the friendship is like, we're so close, you know, like we have this great relationship. And yeah, like, and there would oftentimes too be like flippant kind of remarks about things that were very serious or traumatic for me. And I was like, oh, I think a lot of this is more of a performance, and it's easier to perform this type of relationship when you're like, it's sort of that scripted thing, like, oh, if I remember that this is happening at her job and I ask her about it, then I seem like a really good friend, right?
Yeah.
But then it's like when I need actual, like, real emotional support and some serious shit has gone down, it's not as easy to follow this kind of script to be like, oh, look at me performing friendship. And I don't mean that it was necessarily done in, like, I don't think there were necessarily malicious intent behind it, but it helped me to understand, like, why I so often felt uneasy, even though I was like, well, on the surface, this looks like a pretty healthy, functioning relationship. And then it just took me a while, I think, when things were serious, to be like, why do I feel so weird about this? You know? But then I was like, oh, because I don't think this person actually... I kind of felt like they actually didn't care that much, if I'm being honest.
I feel like a lot of people who do that don't realize they're doing it.
Yes.
And then when you bring it up, they'll never admit or
it's like, what?
They really don't think they do it. They really believe it's like well-intentioned and authentic, but I think it's obvious when it is. No one wants to be told that, like, the way they've been a friend is a bad way to be a friend. When I broke up with my friend, she was, like, very blindsided by it. And that's a lot to do with me. And her biggest complaint, I guess, that she had with me was that she was like, why didn't you bring up any of this, like, because I had been feeling this way for like a year. And she's like, well, why didn't you bring this up? And, like, the real answer I would have loved to given her was that I don't think that she was capable of acting another way. And so I didn't think that a conversation would have even helped. I think if anything, it would have made things worse. Yeah. So I always thought to myself, no, I can just push down these feelings for the sake of the friendship. And then I just realized one day that I couldn't push them down. And I didn't want to push them down for the sake of the friendship anymore. And it's like, it sucks that I can't go back and do things differently. And I'm sorry about that. And I'm sorry to feel blindsided, but you were never going to see my point. And you were never going to understand how I felt about it. Because she still doesn't believe that anything she did, she was in the wrong for. So it makes it impossible sometimes.
It does. And it's really frustrating to me. Like, it sucks to get blindsided, but honestly, and this may be an unpopular opinion, but I just really feel that it's so infrequent that someone is actually blindsided. I feel like maybe you chose to not see or hear things that were happening, or, and chose is a strong word. Like, I agree with you. I think a lot of this stuff is just, it's not conscious, it's not someone consciously doing it, but it's just how they are. But yeah, it's like, you can't put this entire thing on me. Like, even that, like, why didn't you say something? It's like, well, do you feel like you've really fostered a relationship where I could say something? If you're being honest?
Exactly.
And that's kind of like what I had wanted, was like, it's okay for you to be hurt and it's okay for this to suck. But, like, in these final moments, you can't acknowledge that for a fact that you did not create space for these kinds of conversations to happen and this kind of work to happen. And that, I mean, for us, we had the same issue. Like, I had actually addressed stuff repeatedly and it was not handled. And it's like, yeah, in this parting, that we're having, like, you can't just acknowledge that and give me that. Like, it's fine if you're upset. It's fine if you didn't think it was that bad and you're shocked, that, like, it's come to that level for me. That's totally understandable. But yeah, it's just really fucking unfair to act like all of this was under my control and on my side, and if I had done things differently, we'd have a different outcome, when like you're here too. Like you are also part of this relationship.
Yeah, this person, like, in her mind, I think blaming me for not coming to her sooner absolved any wrongdoing that she had done in the friendship.
Yep.
Like
100%.
that was the thing that, like, it was all my fault because I didn't come to her sooner, and that she had since she had no idea, she had no fault in it. And once I realized that, like, she saw things that way, I was like, there's just no point in me continuing to have this conversation with you. I'm not going to convince you of anything. And she just started to get mean, honestly. And I was just like, I'm done. Like,
yeah.
Sorry, I'm not going to take that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, do you not see what you're doing now and how this kind of proves my point? You know?
100%. I had the biggest epiphany during the conversation we were having where we were like breaking up. I just was like, oh my God, like this, she was never going to get it. And so it just really cemented for me the fact that I did the right thing. And it made me feel really good about the decision.
Same. Yeah. And, you know, in a sick way, it's like, you did me a giant favor, because I probably would have felt kind of sad or kind of bad, but now I'm just like ready to party. Like, I'm like,
Bye.
This is great. Yeah, later. Glad I don't have to deal with this again. Yeah, and I definitely had it. I think it was interesting because I think the biggest thing I had to process from this particular breakup was, who was this person actually all along? And I'm trying to be non-specific, but yeah, I really had to, I mean, I guess I've already said it, but I really had to grapple with like what politics does this person even actually have? And have we been out here just spouting some bullshit and I didn't know? You know,
Right.
what is this person going to be like now that I'm not in their life? Are they going to go back to how they were before? Like, was all this growth just a performance? It just really kind of threw me for a loop, that like, I thought I knew, you know, I thought I had a good handle on this person's like flaws and struggles and like who they were, but it just threw like this whole new light onto it where I'm like, oh wow, like that's you? Okay, well now I don't really even know what I was just doing.
Yep.
What I was like,
those moments where people will show their true colors.
yes. Yeah, it like really threw me like to think about, what have I attached my name and my reputation and my self to for all this time. I had another friend breakup when I was much younger, of this person who I just loved. She's so weird and just wonderful. But she was incredibly self-destructive. And it finally got to the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. And a lot of it was around, I mean, it was hard to watch her be self-destructive, but part of the way that her self-destructive tendencies manifested was that she would disappear for weeks or months at a time because she wouldn't want to talk about like what she was doing, because she knew it was like really self-destructive. And you know, I want to think that like she could have talked to me, but I can also admit that I was much more judgy and rigid back then, so I can understand why she also felt like she couldn't. But yeah, like this kept happening, and then every time she would come back in my life, she's like, oh, Nick, I love that you, like, I can just pop in and like you don't give me any shit about being gone. And so it was kind of like she groomed me to not be able to say, well, hey, I actually am not okay with it, that you just like fall off. Because she was the type of person, we'd hang out like 4 days in a row And then she would just suddenly be gone for like 2 months. I'd be like, where are you? She was one of my like almost everyday type of friends, but then she would just like disappear.
That's scary.
Yeah. And especially, when you know someone's being really self-destructive, you're like, are you alive? Like, can you at least let me know you're not dead? But she got involved. A lot of her self-destructiveness was around like promiscuous sex. And I'm like, definitely not judging, slut shaming or anything. But she would put herself in like she would sleep with guys at work in a way where it was like, then she, like the kind of guys who are not nice to her and would tell everyone at work. So she would do stuff like that where it's like, and she wouldn't get anything out of it. Like sometimes she would like give them head during their lunch break and like, then they would just go make jokes about her. So it's the kind of thing where you're like, honey, like I love you. Like I want you to be okay. And that was the sort of stuff like she just wouldn't talk to me about. And so she would just disappear. So anyway, we were friends for a couple years and I ended up moving to California and she decided to ghost on me before I moved. So I kept texting her being like, I'm moving in 3 months. I'm moving in 2 months. I'm moving in a month. I'm moving next week. And never said anything. And then she ended up emailing me back when people emailed each other. She ended up emailing me like, I think it was like a few weeks after I had already been living here, being like, hey, I want to get drinks tonight. Do you want to join me? Well, she must have texted then. I remember I emailed her and then she was like, we can talk about you moving or something. And I was like, bitch, I'm gone. Like I've been gone, And so I ended up writing her this big long email about like, I just couldn't do it. And I was like, it's actually not okay to me that you disappear all the time. And it's really hurtful, and like, I'm sure if I read that email today with like my radical leftist feminist eyes, I'm sure I said stuff that I wouldn't maybe say today. I remember I edited it to make it much softer. So I hope that it's like not too harsh, but I did say like, you're abandoning our friendship because you're doing stuff that you don't want to face. And like, you have to understand, like, that's really hard for me, And I don't get to have space in this relationship. I don't get to call my friend and talk about stuff I need to talk about. I don't get to have your support when I need your support. I didn't even get to say goodbye to you,
Yeah.
And she never responded, which was very much like her. She probably saw like the subject line of the email and didn't even read it. It wouldn't even surprise me. And then years and years later, because my best friend back then that's how I met this person, was through her. So we were kind of like a threesome. When I went back and visited, my friend was like, hey, she's interested, like she wouldn't mind us all going out for drinks or something. And I was like, I just can't, like, on this trip, because I think I only had like 1 or 2 days to see my friend. I was like, if I was here longer, then maybe like we could do that, but I just don't want to have that like stress right now.
That's very fair.
Yeah, but it sucked. Like, I still think about her all the time. She was super into like, oh my God, she was so funny. She was so into like rap and hip hop, and she's like your stereotypical like tiny white girl. But in a way that just was very amusing. Like, she loves celebrity culture, and she would always talk about J-Lo was one of her like faves. And she would be like, Nicole, J-Lo never looked better than when she was with Puffy. And I would just be like, what are you talking about? And she would like passionately tell me why that was the height of J-Lo's like beauty and like her fame. And I'd be like, all right, I have no counter argument. She's just so fun.
Myself, to be honest.
You do actually remind me of her a bit, just without like the wildly self-destructive tendencies. Like when when what was it, the Biggie Smalls movie came out, she was like, "We're going opening night." I was like very insistent, and I was like, "All right, I'll go see that with you." She was a trip. So yeah, it sucks because like she's someone like I actively miss her, but there just was no, like, I would not want to be back in touch with her without knowing like what kind of work she's explicitly done on herself to be able to like be a friend. And it's almost like when you fall in love with someone and they can't give you what you need and you're like, I just need to cut you off because like I feel too strongly about you. That's kind of how I feel about her. Like, I love you so much that I can't handle you like not being able to be a full friend to me.
Of course.
Yeah. Whereas there's other people where I'm like, we can be casual and that's fine, you know, and I just need less from you. But with her, it's like, I just adore you too much. Like, we need to have a fully functioning relationship or nothing.
Yeah, it's hard to watch people go through those things too. Like, it messes with your own boundaries and
Yes.
the way you live your life. And sometimes you need to kind of put the cut in it for your own mental health.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really true because I know, I think it was somewhat towards the end of our friendship. So she was the type of friend where we would go out or she would come over and she would just regale us with her wild stories. And it was something over time I realized was like kind of a, you know, it became like we were supporting her destructive behavior in some ways, but she would also spin these stories to make them fun. And it was kind of like only over time did you start to pick up on like, A, she's flat out lying about some things to make it sound better. And B, like that there's this pattern of self-destructiveness here. But yeah, she used to tell us like she dated this really wealthy Middle Eastern person. I can't remember what country he was from, but he was like an oil, like his family was like an oil tycoon family. So he's like this ridiculously wealthy person. And she would just tell us these stories of like where he would take her and the parties they would go to and the stuff they would do. And she would always tell us about her casual hookups and all the wild things she would do. And it was just so fun and funny. But anyway, to your point, I realized over time that, you know, I'm not like that in a sense. Like I do like talking about sex and telling stories and stuff, but I just wasn't like the same speed as her. But I had this casual hookup with this guy and I was talking about it very much in the kind of way that she would talk about it. And I remember she like pulled me aside after and she's like, I'm kind of concerned. This is very not like you. And I think she's like, oh, maybe I'm rubbing off on you.
Oh, wow.
And was kind of worried about it. Yeah. And it was an interesting moment because I had to really sit down and be like, yeah, is this me or is this not me? You know?
Right.
And I felt a little judged. Like, I think maybe part of it too is like she didn't want to lose her seat as the wild story queen. But at the same time, I kind of appreciated the check-in, which is also ironic because I couldn't check in with her and be like, I think you might die. Can you please stop?
Yeah.
But anyway, to your point, yeah, it was kind of like the culture of that was sort of starting to skew my behavior and my perception of things in a way that probably wasn't very healthy. And that can be hard. It can be hard to, not that you necessarily need to say it to them, but to look at someone and be like, you're a bad influence on me, you know? And the shit you're doing to yourself, like, I don't want to do that to myself.
Yeah. I look back on, like, the friendship that I had with the girl in Toronto. It was just based on partying, and I was just like, I look back on that, and I'm like, I do not recognize myself at all, like, whatsoever. And I'm glad it never lasted that long, but yeah, it was scary to look back and realize, like, I've always prided myself on always like staying true to myself and being independent, and um, just seeing how easily I got kind of thrown into like a, I'm gonna say dangerous, but I don't know if it was like super dangerous, but I got thrown into this life that like just wasn't good.
Yeah.
Good.
I know
Um,
for me, it's kind of like, how intentional is this? It's not even necessarily like, what am I doing? It's more just like, am I doing this intentionally? And am I actually enjoying it? Or am I just doing it because other people are doing it?
right.
I know the last time I stopped drinking, that was a big part of it, is I realized I was drinking a lot just because the people around me were drinking a lot.
Mhm.
And I had kind of lost my ability to actually evaluate in the moment if I like wanted to drink or not. So I was like, let me just stop, because then I know if I'm not, I can just stick to that. But it's harder if I'm like, oh, well, I could, but I don't know. And yeah, I just realized I was like drinking, and like drinking pretty heavily too, especially for me. Yeah, quite often. And it's like, yeah, I don't want to judge anyone's behavior, but I just think when you start wearing these well-worn patterns in your behavior, and you stop being able to even picture like how you would relate to each other otherwise, I think that's when it,
Yeah.
like when you have a friend, you're like, well, what else would we do? I think that's when it starts to get a little dangerous, because then it's almost like your relationship is this Pavlovian response where it's like, at least that's what happened to me, is like, oh, I'm around this person, so I immediately want to drink because that's what we do together.
That's
Like,
our
I
thing.
don't,
Yeah.
yeah, like I don't even have, I don't know, like I don't even have my own thought process again with it. It's just, yeah, we get together and immediately like there's alcohol somewhere, and that's just what it is.
Yep. I find with all of my friends, they're kind of like like I go to this one for this, or if I want to talk about this, I'll go to
Mm-hmm.
this one for this, which is usually like really innocent. But yeah, when it comes down to like the bigger things like drinking, I find like drinking is a huge part of friend groups and can really mess
Mm.
things up. Like it's crazy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I have like a bigger kind of friend group, and I feel like only time all of us really get together is like to go to the bar or to, you know, go to someone's house and drink or whatever. And then I find myself being like, or like even looking at other friendships from the outside and being like, wow, they're all just like going out for brunch, or like they're all just like going for a walk or something. And it's like, why doesn't my friend group do that? Or why can't we?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why does that naturally come to us? It's, yeah, it's really interesting to think about.
Yeah. And it's really hard too, because I actually like made the effort to be like, oh, hey, maybe we could go do this other thing instead. And it did not go over. um, and that's when you're kind of like, well, I can't ignore this anymore, right? Because it's like I've noticed it and I've also tried to change it. And now I just kind of have to evaluate, is this going to work for me? And yeah, if you're in a position where you can be like, okay, if I ever feel like I really want to party, I'll give you a call. But like otherwise, we kind of don't see each other. Sometimes that can work.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I think it's like just sort of the end, you know? Whether it's like a drift apart sort of thing or if it's like an intentional thing, it can be really hard. Because I know, like, with my two closest friends here, that was a big reason we have lasted as long as we have, is that our friendship was built around like yoga and like eating, but like we're all kind of health conscious, whatever that means, you know? So like we have very similar modes of eating. Um, Board games, like talking. So there's just so much, like if any of us are not drinking, it's not a big deal because we have just all these other things we like to do together. And honestly, anytime we do drink, it's during some other activity. Like the drinking isn't the point of our hangout. And that's just been so much more sustainable.
big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that can be really hard for people who have friends. I know, like, I was close to someone that this was sort of his problem, is that he had friends from like high school and college, and they were still like his friends, but their friendship had just been around drinking and doing drugs and going to clubs and stuff, and they were like still doing those things. But he didn't feel like he knew how to make new and different friends as an adult. So it's like you just stay and you just keep doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But you're getting older and older. It's not as cute anymore.
That's another topic, like the friends of your partner. Which could be a whole
said it.
whole other podcast probably.
Oh my god.
my boyfriend now, like, he moved from Ontario. Like, we met when I was in Toronto, and he moved out to the East Coast with me, and we've been living here for a few years now back home. And I thought he would like hate it here, but he doesn't. But he still, like, it is so hard to make friends. And so I know he's really like mourning not having friendships in his life. And for a while it was like a big it affected our relationship because he was always home and he was always with me, and like I need my effing space. Like, I no.
Are you a Scorpio? Have we talked about this?
I'm a Scorpio moon.
That explains it.
So yeah, and it was really hard because like I'm kind of like a tough love gal, and so people aren't going to come to me when they need like a really gushy emotional opinion or advice. And especially with him, I'm very kind of like blunt, and because I do feel like that's what he needs too, and he has like told me that as well. But like, you know, a year and a half went by, and he would still be talking about, you know, it's so hard to make friends here. I don't have any friends here. And I'm just like, okay, so what are you doing about it?
I love it.
Bless her if he's watching this right now. I love you, but yeah, it was hard. It like affected me, and so I was kind of just like, okay, like if you want to make new friends in this new place, like you have to make the effort, man. Like this is affecting us. Like it's affecting me, and like I don't know how to be your girlfriend, your partner, your roommate, and your friend, like you know, all the time at once. And anyway, it's like gotten a lot better, but it still just goes to show how hard making adult friends are. You can pretty much like only make them at work, which is not like the best place to make friends because you're always together during the day and you're not going to like always want to hang out with them after that. And so everything just revolves around work. And anyways.
Yeah, and it's really, I've come to realize this, especially after leaving my job of 10 years, you know, leaving my company of 10 years. You know, I had some like really good friends there along the way, but it's almost nearly impossible to know if you are actually friends with someone or if you're just like trauma bonded over work. Like I had people that I was like, this person is legitimately like my friend. And then the second I left the job, it was like, oh, we have nothing to talk about, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, even like during work, we would talk about all kinds of other stuff, but it was kind of like you said, like it was because we were in proximity to each other. So it's like, if have no choice and we're sitting next to each other all day, not to say we don't genuinely like each other, but it just creates this very false sense of intimacy and connection that like sometimes when you change the context, it doesn't work anymore.
Totally. And I feel like with friends outside of work, when you're trying to make new friends, like I know like there's, you know, some people that I've went to coffee with or something that I felt like we had a good connection, so I wanted to kind of get to know them better. And then I realized like if the conversation just can't like flow organically, then if you don't have enough stuff to kind of like have in common or talk about, it's just probably not gonna go many places. But then at work, like you were saying, it's this like false sense of friendship because you always have something to be in
Yeah.
common about. You always have something to talk about.
And when there's lulls, they're like acceptable because you're working,
'Cause you're working.
right? So like if the conversation peters out, it's like, oh, I'll just go back to working, which I'm supposed to be doing anyway. And then, yeah, you just kind of have that person there. So like anytime you do have something to say, you can say it. And yeah, it creates this false sense of like, oh, we always have stuff to talk about. And it's like, well, because you're in an environment that's giving you stuff to talk about, and also because you're in an environment where being quiet is like acceptable. Whereas if you're face to face over coffee and then you have that like awkward silence, you're like, well, fuck.
Yeah. I'm the worst at small talk too. Like,
oh, me too.
Like,
I know.
Like when I give people tattoos, sometimes like they're pretty quiet, and I'm like, anything, Hilary. Just think of anything you could say right now.
Yeah.
And there's nothing.
Yes. I have that problem too. I've gotten better at it, but I think like literally at cost to my health. Like I honestly think that like it has taken something from me to learn how to do. And even then I'm still not great at it.
Yeah.
Like I'm only good if I can get someone talking about something that I care about or like that they care about.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very bad at mingling. Like I still to go into a space where I don't know anyone, I'm still like, fuck this.
Yes.
I'm like, I'll just die alone. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm gone.
I can force myself to like have, small talk conversations with people when it's to do with like work, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's just kind of like an acquaintance or something, it's awkward. And I feel like social media has kind of social media because like I follow so many people in my community, and my city is so small. So like if I leave my house, I will run into someone I know. Like there's no doubt about it. And whenever you see these people, like what am I gonna say? Like, so I saw you crying on Instagram last night. Like, tell me about your trauma. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
I feel like I know you so much because I literally follow you on your Instagram. You post all the time, but now you're behind me in the coffee shop, and it's just awkward to be like, so heard your dog had a bladder infection, or like, you know what I mean? It just feels weird to know so much about people.
It's so weird.
In real life, it's just awkward.
It's very awkward. And that happens to me a lot, meeting people like through the show or like through us all being activists or something, just being connected online in whatever way, because there can be people that I genuinely really like. But when we meet up in person, it's just like, it just doesn't happen. And I don't know why, but it's like, I don't know what to talk to you about. Because maybe we have this connection over like being activists, but I don't know like I don't know what to talk, like I don't know anything about your day-to-day life. I don't know what you're into or like whatever. And my biggest pet peeve with people is when I try to make small talk and they're just like, and it's like, listen, this is awkward. We both know it. So if I give you, I was like, if I give you a prompt, you just need to run with it. Like, we have to be in this moment together. And I just hate when people are like, won't, like, I don't know. Like, at that point, I'm like, let's just both admit that this is not working and walk away.
Yeah, the other person has to at least humor you if you're trying.
Yeah, if I'm trying, it's like, I don't care about what I just asked about either, but we're here.
Yes.
So let's just give it a shot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's a few activists in particular that I like have really good chemistry with, but like anytime I see them, I literally don't even know what to say to them at all. And it's funny how you can have that with certain people. It's like somehow you've gotten in each other's orbits and it's been very positive, but you're like, I don't even know like what to say to you, what to ask you. I don't know where to start a conversation with you at all.
Sometimes you just don't mesh with some people, and not in a bad way. It just is not gonna happen. And I don't
or
really
you
know
mesh in like certain ways, but not in other ways. Like, you know, we can be cool online or we can trade messages here and there, but like we can't hang out together.
Yeah. And I always find it interesting, like, I'm thinking of one of my friends in particular, like, she's just such an extrovert and she's such a social butterfly, and she makes friends everywhere she goes. Like, she could just be friends with anybody, and she has so many friends because of it. And if she comes to a party, you know, and there's like 10 new people there, she'll be best friends with all of them by the end of the night. And like, not just like superficially, like, you know, they'll be long time friends. And I'm just like, what's wrong with me? I could never, ever do
it's
that.
your Scorpio moon. We just want to be adored. We don't want to make any effort. Are you kidding me? Yeah, no, I've felt that way too. It's something I've had to. I mean, I can be pretty charming and I can do fairly well in social situations, but I've been in enough. It's funny because occasionally I'll stumble into a situation where I'm like, oh, I remember this feeling of feeling completely awkward and not knowing what to do at all. And it's interesting. Like, I got very good at mingling and making friends at work conferences because, like, you have to, you know? So I learned, like, how to talk to our clients and get them going. But it's easier because we're all in the same industry. So there are certain things that you can kind of, like, I can be like, why did you become a financial advisor? How long have you been doing it? And usually from that, like, I'll pick up on something interesting and then have like an interesting conversation. But yeah, when you just have like general people, it can be really hard to know how, no, I hate feeling awkward, and yet I am. And it's okay.
I think it also comes down to like there's always that question, like, would you rather have a couple close friends or a bunch like 20 not as close friends? And for my friend, she probably operates like, she'd rather have 100 people in her life that she doesn't know very well. And for me, like, that does not sound like a good time in the slightest at all. So I don't know how to make authentic connections with like a lot of people.
Yeah, it's really hard.
And it takes a lot of energy for me to have friends. It's like I've had to work at it to be a priority. And so I've just never prioritized getting to know a lot of people or making an effort with people if I don't really feel like it's going to go anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had that realization. I think I may have mentioned it on the show before, but I, left my job, and then I left during the holidays. So it was kind of hard to know when to schedule my going away happy hour. But usually for someone who had been there that long, the happy hour would be a huge deal. And like your boss would actually fund it and like would probably get you a big present. And it was just like humiliating. Like nobody showed up. And like my former manager did do work to get me a couple like gift certificates, which was nice of her to do, but it wasn't like, you know what I'm saying? Like normally like your department head would be like, oh, like take it out of the budget and get her something really nice. And like, we'll make it like a thing. And it was a series of events that happened too. Like our department head left right before I left. And then there were just all these changes in management, a bunch of stuff happened. So there were like multiple reasons for this, but it was just that was kind of one of those moments where I'm like, oh, I thought I was like really friends with these people, but I guess we weren't, And it was like, well, that sucks. And I had that realization. I had that experience too when I got moved over to training. So I've been in the operations department, and I sat with these other people every day for years, and we were really, really close. I mean, like, one of them, I went to her house and like cooked for her family, and like, we were very close. And the second I moved departments, they stopped talking to me. And I was like, why? I was just so confused by it. And I would actually make the effort. Like, I would go down in the morning and try to sit with them, like, while they were having their coffee. And they literally would, like, turn their backs to me and just be working. And I'm like, you fuckers, I know that you're not working right. Like, like, I sat with you for years. I know that you're very fine to take a break in the morning.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of it was just, I don't know if they were, I think maybe they were, like, I hate using the word jealous because it sounds so self-serving, but I just think like my situation had changed and theirs hadn't, even though my new job was like not that great. It wasn't like I'm like, up in a big fancy office now. It was like, no, I just moved floors and I'm getting paid like barely more than I was before. But I think it was, people who are kind of in the same place for a super long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe we're even kind of okay with it, but something about my situation changing just made me an outsider, like, overnight. And that was really hard because these are people that I was like, oh, we'll be friends, like, no matter what. And I had talked to them about everything under the sun. Like, we talk about our relationships and our hobbies and all this stuff. So I was like, oh, it's not just like a work relationship, but turned out.
That's the weird thing about work relationships is like as soon as something shifts on the work end of things,
Mm-hmm.
or one of those people becomes your boss, or
Mm-hmm.
then
Yeah.
It all goes downhill.
Yeah, and you're have the risk of like that competitiveness and comparison because you are in the same, like, the thing that bonds you is also the thing that makes you in conflict with each other in some ways.
Yeah, and it's hard because sometimes like you because of the false sense of a work friendship, you feel like you can confide in people about work,
mm-hmm.
and then that can backfire on you. Like, that person will throw you under the bus if it comes down to it, really, and then you're kind of blindsided. And
that's my favorite reality TV cliche. Everyone's always throwing each other under the bus. I had an ex who like hated that phrase, and I would watch a lot of reality TV, and just every time someone would say it, he would say it too. You'd be like, oh man, just threw her under the bus. It's like 5 times an episode.
Yeah. Have you ever watched The Challenge?
No.
Okay.
I haven't even heard of it.
It's so straight. Well, every reality show
yeah.
But it's like basically, it's like competitive, like head-on challenges, but they're also like living in a house together, and they like go head-to-head and they get eliminated anyway. But my whole point is that like these people are always surprised that they're like being lied to, and I'm like, you literally signed up for a reality show, so I don't know.
Yeah. I don't understand what you don't get. So I know we've been going for a while. Looking to see if there's any like juicy things we definitely need to cover before we wrap up. I think one note that I think we both had that I would like to at least mention is that like I think for some people, and it sounds like we both are like this, we tend to be more vulnerable with our friends than even maybe like a romantic partner. And I know for me, not having family, like I tend to be more vulnerable with my friends in a lot of different ways. Like I always have to have a friend as my emergency contact because I don't have anyone else to be that for me. So there's a lot of ways in which like if I break up with a friend, that, I just find myself in a really vulnerable spot. And I also find that that person has kind of a lot of power to like fuck up my life. Versus like I'm so much more guarded with romantic relationships. Like I won't even like link social media accounts with someone until we're basically engaged. Like
Yeah.
I dated someone and he's like, let's follow each other's Instagram accounts, and I was like, no. I couldn't tell him what it was. Because I'm like, I don't need you spying on me. I don't need to like see your stuff. I just don't know. So there's silly stuff like that where it's like we have all these pictures together and we're tagged and everything together, and we have like years of like documentation of our friendship, up to stuff that's like pretty important, like you're my emergency contact, or you're the person that like if something happened I would have depended on you, or like we may own a business together, like there's a lot of ways in which I think we underestimate how much like a friendship can be really hard to actually get out of.
Yep. I just saw someone ask another question too that would kind of...
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
Oops.
I feel like that was what you were saying is probably a good segue into that.
Yeah, so Ayola asked, can you talk about things that have helped you recover from friend breakups? Which is a very good question. Would you like to start?
Well, like...
You can say no. No rush.
I've come from... my friend breakups have been a positive thing in my life. That I haven't felt like I needed to recover from. So I'm probably not the best person to answer this. I'm gonna be honest.
You're such a you're such a tough bitch. You're just like,
oh, I just get over it. No,
yeah.
I'm just kidding. No.
Good luck getting over me. You're like, you should ask them how they got over me.
So I'm a narcissist.
Yeah, I mean, same. Oh my God.
I'm fortunate that my friend breakups have been on my terms, and that I've like come to the conclusion of it myself. That's
yeah. I think that does make a big difference, because I know some people who submitted stories, there were a few where they had like a very important long-term friendship and it ended by the other person ghosting and they still don't know why. And so I think something like that is so much different and harder to recover from than something like, like I've hit the end of my rope with this person and I've processed that they're just not a person who works for me and I ended it. Like those are two wildly different things to have to work through. And yeah, I should say that I have someone that I was incredibly close to who's been a friend of mine, I think for five or maybe even 6 years, who last year, like we hung out and had a really good time and then has not contacted me since. And I don't know why. And it's like, I'm finally starting to feel somewhat like resolved, but I have literally been like crying my eyes out for a year, being like, I don't know why this person just like left my life with no word. And I feel like especially this last year, because this was someone who knew that I had like left to start working for myself. We had a pandemic, we had an economic like depression. And like to think not only did this person disappear from my life, but they like don't even care to check in and make sure I'm okay financially, health-wise, like however, has been really hard. And I don't even know if I have a tip for how to deal with it. It's like it's so hard to deal with something that's just a big giant question mark,
Yeah, that's the thing. If you don't have closure, it's never going to feel settled.
Yeah. It's wild. But you know, I think for a lot of it, like if someone has left you, I think the best you can do is just really accept it and understand that it doesn't mean that you're like a bad person. It doesn't mean that you're like fundamentally unlovable or flawed. Like I'm very lucky to have other people in my life who really love me and that I feel safe that they're not going to do that to me. And just to kind of say, like, well, this person must have had their reasons. Sucks I don't know what they are, but I don't need to let this be like my story about myself going forward. I can know that like this was just this one person and it doesn't necessarily say anything about me. I think if someone's broken off a relationship with you and was honest with you why, like try to really hear that and process it. It doesn't mean that what they said was true. You know, like sometimes toxic people can stop being friends with you and what they say is not accurate. Or, you know, they, yeah. I guess a lot of it's just around like establishing your own sense of reality and making peace with that reality. Just trying to do like a really deep gut check on things and say, okay, for me, this is what's true, and now I'm going to accept it. I'm going to move forward. If there's something I need to learn here, I'm going to learn it, and I'm going to do my best to just kind of let the rest be what it is. I think it's okay to be hurt. I don't know that people have, like, I was thinking about this when we were planning this episode, and I was like, there aren't any really, like, songs you can listen to and cry for a friend breakup. There's not really movies. You know, like, when you go through a romantic breakup, I feel like there's so much, like, media and stuff around how to deal with that. You can listen to, like, sad love songs, and you can watch, like, rom-coms and cry and kind of, like, process it that way. But I think with friend breakups, it's a little bit harder. We don't have really good established patterns for that. And I think like a lot of people don't really know how to support someone through a friend breakup. Yeah. But I don't think it needs to be much different than any other kind of breakup, honestly.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be harder. Like friend breakups can be harder in a lot of ways. But I think the healing process is pretty similar to a romantic breakup, or even if you've had to cut someone in your family off. You know, I think honoring what you did have with that person, trying to avoid like vilifying them completely. I think just like being honest about who they are is really important. And just, yeah, give yourself a lot of time to grieve and feel that that grief is like very valid.
And I know you mentioned too, a part of the reason why friendship breakups are harder than romantic breakups is because when you break up with a friend, they're just out of your life.
Mm-hmm.
When you break up with a romantic partner, that isn't always the case.
Yeah.
Your friend.
Yeah, it's true. Like you can't recontextualize the relationship because like there's nowhere for it to go, really.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think honoring that like it's really rough to have to be like, this person just has to be out of my life completely. And Ayola said, the friend breakup I'm thinking of happened 2 years ago. I feel like I'm 90% over it, but I still get sad about it sometimes. And I would say like honor that, you know, yeah, it's a loss.
Yeah.
It's a loss like a death. It's a loss like a romantic relationship, like anything else. And honestly, to me, it's almost kind of, well, I guess it depends on what kind of sadness you're feeling, but I think like missing that person a little bit is kind of healthy and a nice nod to the fact that like whatever you did have was valid, you know, even if it didn't work. Mm-hmm. Because that's how I feel. Like I have a romantic relationship like that where, you know, it's been a very long time and I'm over it. Like I don't want that person back, but I still have some mistiness for the fact that we didn't work out. And to me, it's almost nice now to be like, oh, the love that I had for this person, like something about it was very valid because it's lasted this long.
Yeah.
But also I'm in like the healthy self-respecting space to be like, this person is not good for me. And, you know, I don't want to actually have a relationship with them. And, you know, I'll be honest too, sometimes you don't feel sad. Sometimes you're just fine and relieved, and that's okay too. I've actually had to...
Yeah, that's where I'm coming from it.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me, like, sometimes my brain works so logically that I feel guilty for not showing more emotion for things in my life. Just things that happen to me, and then I can just kind of get over it. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't often give that time to mourn things. Like which I think is kind of the more socially acceptable way to do it, or kind of the more normal way to do it, and then that makes me feel guilty about not having those emotions like everybody else does. And yeah
I go through that too, of like, yeah, am I some cold robot, or like what is wrong with me? But yeah, I just want to validate for some people. I mean, sometimes I think, especially if it's a relationship that was very draining, that dragged on probably a lot longer than it should have, it's actually very normal and very acceptable to just be happy and relieved and not really have to go through any kind of grieving process. And that can make you feel really weird. Yeah. Yola said something that struck me is the thought that they could die in the pandemic and I wouldn't know. And that's how I feel about my ghosted friend, is like, they could have died, I could have died, and like we wouldn't know. And it just, to me, that's like, just keeps blowing my mind. Like, how can we be in this situation where we're not checking in on each other? But we are. Yeah, I think probably for a lot of people, the pandemic really heightened a lot of this stuff too, just because you are dealing with so much more of a sense that like someone could pass away, you know, something really big could happen. And I know for me, that was part of what actually made me more inclined to cut off this relationship, because it was kind of that clarifying lens of like, shit's real right now, so I don't want to do this anymore. You know, you just have less energy for the bullshit.
Yeah.
But I can see it could also kick up a lot of feelings if you had a friendship end and now you're feeling isolated and things are really scary. I think it would be really normal to be having a lot of a very hard time processing that in this particular situation. Yeah. Anything else, friend?
I don't think so.
I don't think for me either. That was pretty good. That was a longer one. Well, Hilary, do you want to promote your very cool tattoo business or your personal accounts or anything? Where do you want people to find you?
My personal Instagram account is hilary.shelby. Recently changed my username. You know when you have like a username for such a long time?
Yeah.
You just change it and you're like, who am I?
I liked your old username a lot.
Yeah, and you know what was funny? What made me realize people read it differently than I meant it to be was the Bearded Vegans had a episode once where they read off a question I had asked them. And so my old username was Baby Hurl. And I meant it like baby girl, but Hurl, because baby girl was taken. So anyway, I think Andy was like, stop chucking those babies. And I was like,
oh my god, that's so funny. Yeah. No, I totally took it as like baby hurl, and I took it as like, to me it was so you, of like, that would be your response to someone calling you baby girl or something. I don't know. It just was very like you. I loved it. But yeah, stop chucking those babies, Hilary.
Um,
Damn.
but other than that, yeah, I do hand poke tattoos. I'm on the east coast of Canada, so I'm sure, you know, are most people from America, you find, that listen to the show?
There's a good mix, but yeah, I guess the concentration is in the US.
Yeah.
But I do have a
Um,
lot of Canadian people, which is why I wanted to give you the opportunity just in case.
well, something I'm just really passionate about is like making the tattoo industry a lot more inclusive.
Love
Um,
that.
and it's why I started tattooing. It's why I'm still doing it. It's why I'm going to keep doing it. So I do post like on my account, it's bliss.tattoo. I post about that a lot and I share a lot of really, really cool like artists, like tattoo artists who are really like forging a new path in the tattoo industry, which I love. So they're from all over the world. So yeah, if you're interested in tattoos and inclusivity.
Look me up. Um, no, I think that's super cool. I don't know if I ever told you this, but we were going to get, when we were in Portland once, we were going to get like spontaneous tattoos. And because, Portland's kind of like known for tattoos. And we went to this place that had really, like, was like, had a really good reputation. Um, And the tattoo artist and also the person at the front desk made us so uncomfortable that we ended up just leaving. And
I'm
it
glad
just
you
very
laughed.
much, yeah, it very much felt like we're too cool, and like I don't have time for. And we were even like very nice about it. It was like, we know this is last minute. This is just kind of an impulse thing. The tattoos we wanted were not necessarily an impulse thing, but it was like going to get it was. And we're like, if people don't have time, that's totally fine. But we figured we'd stop in and see if it was possible. Like we were trying to be like really nice and like acknowledge that. And it was like, well, this person is like about to take their lunch break, but maybe they could fit you in after. And it's like, well, you can just say no. Like,
Yeah.
it's fine. And then
It
the guy,
wasn't
when,
intended that way.
yeah, and when we told him like the idea, he was just very like, about it. Like, well, I don't know if like, how, it's like, never mind. Please don't permanently alter my body with that attitude.
Yeah, I've been tattooed by so many dickheads that I just want like when I first started getting tattooed it was by men and then I had my first experience getting tattooed by a woman and
Mm-hmm.
it changed the game for me. Like I was like, "Oh my god, this can actually be a positive experience." Because
Right?
I had all negative experiences with my tattoos before that and I just accepted that that's just how it was and that's just how tattoos were and that's I
Mm-hmm.
just wasn't cool enough and that's fine. But then when I realized it could be different, it was like
Which is
it's
crazy because you're the coolest person I've ever met. Hillary's like, I don't know why I'm so intimidating to people. And I'm like, because you're like so cool. Um,
oh,
no, it's true. Like, that's what I came to realize over time because I watched a friend get tattooed at some shitty shop. I was like, why are we going here? But the guy was so rude to her. And then I ended up having my tattoo artist who technically is very skilled. He's been doing it a long time, so he actually knows how to make tattoos age well and like has a really good eye for that, and he really loves doing original design work and he's like very good at that. But he makes me uncomfortable just in the sense that like I don't know, it is just different. Like it's different when someone's doing something to your body and you're a person whose body is political, then
mhm.
like it just makes a huge difference if that person understands that or doesn't. And it
Yeah.
sucks because like on paper everything about him is what I would want in an artist. Like he's very skilled, his pricing is really great and whatever, but I can't deny that like I it's a negative experience for me every time.
Well, it's only like what we grow to understand about the tattoo industry is that only the cost, pricing, and technical ability of the artist really matter, but like that's just not true. Like
Mhm.
client care is something that should be prioritized among all tattoo shops, like there should be a code of ethics, just like there is for doctors, or, you know, getting tattooed is such a vulnerable experience.
So vulnerable.
So intimate, it's so vulnerable, and some people can just be like, yeah, whip off my clothes, do whatever, but not everyone's like that. And you're permanently altering someone's body, and that is a huge deal. And to not have any regard for the person, that for the client, is like just absolutely not okay in my opinion. It's having that sense of client care is just as important as having safety procedures in place and tattooing, you know,
Yeah.
inner safety.
I totally agree. Especially when you consider that a lot of people are coming in to like mark the death of someone that they cared about, or cover a scar, or like,
Yep.
like I had a friend who wanted to get a tattoo on a place of her body that she historically hated, that part of her body, and she was trying to like change her relationship with it. Like a lot of people are doing that kind, like a tattoo is like emotional work. And then yeah, you go to some dude who's just like, what do you want? I don't get it. Like, oh, okay, I guess I'll try to draw, you know, and you're just like, oh my God, this feels so like a violation.
It's a huge violation. I have clients come in all the time that just tell me, I like almost every client has a horror story, and a lot of them, like, you know, tattoo artists they've been to in the past have like questioned them about their scars, and like just things that are just like so off base and not necessary. And
yeah,
I love giving the power back to the client, like, and I love when I get people in and it's their first tattoo ever, and I'm like, okay, good, this is what your experience should look like.
yeah, and you're only ever gonna have a good experience. Yeah, another thing I hate is when tattoo artists like look at your other tattoos and they're like, where did you get that? It's like, leave me the fuck alone. Just do what I'm asking you to do.
People are so excited about their own tattoos, like,
yeah,
all the time, and they're like, I'm like, so do you have any other tattoos, or is this your first? And they're like, yeah, I have this, and they tell me stories, and I'm like, I love being able to share that with somebody. Like, it's special that you're so stoked on these tattoos you've gotten. Like, I don't care
what they look like
anymore, you know, like, I don't
right.
care. If they're special to you, then that's what matters.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it's like, I do regret this tattoo and I don't need you reminding me of that. Or like, I know it doesn't look great, but I like, you know, just whatever it is. It's like, I don't need you like coming into my situation here and making me feel a way. I'm like trying to collaborate with you on something beautiful now. So let's do that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Hilary.Shelby, Bliss.Tattoo on Instagram. Follow both, either or both. I'll put those links in the show notes as well. And Hilary, just thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. This was great.
Yeah, this was great. All right, kids, I'm going to play the outro video so Hilary and I can have a little break, and we'll be back in 3 minutes for the after party.
Woo.
Woo! Welcome back. So Keck, I don't know if that's how you say it, but yeah, the board game simulator on Steam is amazing. I was really dreading using it because I just had this very like 90s idea of what it would be like. I thought it was going to be like so clunky and just awkward, and I really hate being frustrated doing things, but it actually was amazing. And so far we've played Terraforming Mars and Everdale, and it actually in some ways is better than playing the physical board game because you can get versions that have scripts that automate some of the stuff, which can make it a lot easier to play. And especially if you're playing games that take a while to set up and take down, it can really help with that as well. So I've been very impressed. And then we tend to do a video chat through Discord, so we feel like we can see each other, and we really do feel like we're hanging out together. Like it almost feels like we're in the same room. It's been really nice. We're also all like mourning the fact that we could have been doing this for the last year and we didn't, but we're all trying to be like, it's fine, it's fine. So peeps, I'm looking through the older comments, but yeah, any questions or experiences with tattoos, friend breakups? I was telling Hilary I just watched Showgirls last night, but she hasn't heard of it or seen it, so she didn't realize what an experience that was. But we both have watched, no spoilers, but we both have watched Promising Young Woman, and I think about 10 or 12 of us watched it on Friday through Discord, and I will just say amazing.
Yeah. Highly recommend.
Absolutely amazing. That's actually why I did a red lip today. It was Cassie inspired. Yeah, Mo, I had wanted to go back to it, but the episode is already getting pretty long. But I just wanted to like highlight how you brought up that having abusive parents can make friendships really difficult. And that was also my case. A part of why I was so isolated when I was younger is because like I couldn't bring people back to my house, and I often couldn't also go hang out with people because I had to be home taking care of my sisters. And then like my dad was really like he was just like very unfriendly, sounds like too cute of a word, but he was like very threatening to people. And then my mom, you know, when she was drinking, it was like I just didn't want anyone to see that. So yeah, there was a lot of there, like pretty much my whole childhood, I just felt like I couldn't really have people over, and that I had to keep my home life very separate from my friendships, especially since a lot of parents were very judgy about like the neighborhood I came from was considered like the bad part of the city I lived in. So a lot of parents like already were kind of like didn't want their kids to hang out with me because I was from like the bad area. And then so I didn't want them to know that like my parents were also a mess. So yeah, it can just make things really hard when your family can prevent a lot of connections, I think, while you're still living at home.
I do have a close relationship with my family, but my dad is very antisocial.
Yes. Oh, I thought you were going to drop some juicy, scandalous bomb. And then you're like, antisocial. I'm like, oh, that's cute.
Well, it's not like he's like passionately antisocial. Like, so when I was really little, he I grew up with my dad telling me like, you don't need friends. Friends are like not essential in your life. because he doesn't have any and he just likes it better that way. And so I just kind of grew up like thinking like, well, friends aren't really all that. And kind of weird. Now looking at it, when I know how like important friendships are, I'm like, well, that's why you are the way you are, because you don't have to by choice.
Aw. Are your parents still together? I can't remember. Does your mom like care? Like, does it drive her crazy, or is she fine with it?
Oh, she's fine with it. Like, she's really quiet, very quiet person, but she definitely like would like to kind of get together with family a bit more and stuff. But the rest of us are kind of like, anyway, with our family at least.
Mohira asked Hilary, "Are back tattoos painful?"
Personally, I don't have a back tattoo, so I can't speak from personal experience, but I've done a couple of stick and poke back tattoos, like more so on like people's like upper shoulders or neck kind of region, and they've all said that it hasn't been too bad. But I also have a friend with she has a full back piece, and it was all done with a machine tattoo, and she said it was the worst. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. I would imagine different parts of your back would be different too.
It depends on what you want. It depends on the method of tattooing. Like hand poking is a lot more gentle on the body. So a lot of people are surprised by that. They think it's going to be the other way around. And there's also,
that's what I would have thought.
Yeah, there's also no buzzing with hand tattoo, which people don't realize. Like, it has such a huge effect on your experience. Like, as soon as that little
it's true
machine comes on, you're like...
Yeah, that's the worst part, is when the machine's on, but they're not touching you yet, and you're just, like, waiting.
You're anticipating it.
Yeah, because I know even, like, for my arm... I have, like, this arm has a bunch of different tattoos, and, like, the placement matters hugely. Like this one, I could have done that all day. I was like, I barely even feel this. And then this one, oh my God, it was horrible. So yeah, it's a lot of like where it is too. But I've heard too, my poor friend, so we went and got our first tattoos together, and she ended up deciding to get this like big piece on her ribs as her first tattoo. And she, like, we had to watch her. We thought she was going to go into shock. She was, like, in so much pain. So anyway, I've heard it sucks because, like, I really want kind of like a back tattoo that wraps around a little bit. But I know it's just, like, that will be just intensely painful.
The, like, numbing cream is your best friend. I can't stress it enough. Like,
so what is there a particular brand? Because I've tried to look this up before.
I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but the ingredient is called lidocaine, and it's just like a numbing agent. And so you can find products with lidocaine in it at just like a pharmacy, or you can just order it online. And tattoo shops online will often have like numbing agents, so you know that they work well for tattoos. But I would highly recommend it. Like, when I got my hand tattooed, I used numbing cream for the first time, and it was life-changing. I literally couldn't feel her tattooing my hand, like, even touching it. It was beautiful.
That is beautiful.
I'm very sad.
It was beautiful.
I learned this after I got my stomach tattooed, which was the worst pain of my whole life. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. I thought I was going to die. It was so bad.
That's how I have the hearts on my ankle, like the back of my ankles, and literally the two of them together took about 15 minutes, and I didn't know if I was going to make it. I was like, I feel like I'm actually dying from how painful this is.
That's the thing that really like pisses me off about a lot of the mainstream industry too, is that these tattoo artists who are like, the pain is a part of the process. And you're like, fuck off, this shit hurts. And if I can make it not hurt, I'm gonna make it not hurt.
Right.
Like, you don't have to pretend that it doesn't hurt or lean into it. Like, you don't get a special ribbon
Yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah.
Just use numbing cream.
How long does a numbing cream last for? Because I feel like that was part of what I heard too, is that it lasts like half an hour or 45 minutes. And so if you're getting like a bigger piece, it can be harder to use it.
When I used it with my hand, I put it on an hour before my appointment, and then I wrapped it in saran wrap, and then I got to my appointment, and then she took it off, and my hand was totally numb, and she tattooed for probably about an hour and a half, and I'd say I started feeling it like just after the hour mark, which wasn't that bad, but for a bigger piece, you can also ask your artist, like they can use numbing cream throughout the tattoo as well.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and some like different like lotions that we use throughout the tattoo. Some of them just have numbing agents in them already, so it's like a win-win.
That is great. Yeah, because I do kind of like the pain, but not when it's like super intense. Because I definitely get that euphoria after. So I do kind of like that, but I have some tattoos that I want that I'm like, I'm not going through that. Like, I'm not gonna do that. So it's good because that was part of my tattoo artist as well, is he's very rigid, and so he's like, this is what I'm going to tell you to do because I know that it works. And so like somehow he didn't, I don't know. I tried to ask about numbing cream and he just like wasn't into it, and I was like, well, that's going to limit the tattoos I can get with you then, because there's certain ones that I'm just absolutely not going to have like full pain to get that.
That's like a lot of tattoo artists just like don't recommend it or won't tell you that you can use numbing cream, or if you tell them you want to, they'll say like no.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, find a new tattoo artist.
Yeah. Everett, yeah. Everett said the level of profesh is dwindling because I forgot to put the after party.
We didn't have a disco ball.
We didn't have a disco ball until just now. Yep. The profesh is slipping. I like Mohair said, just knock me out, draw some cool flowers all over me, I'll be a happy camper. Absolutely. Yeah, I want to get thigh pieces as well, and I can't decide if that would be too painful or not.
I found mine painful.
Okay.
I found it though, like,
it was like bearably painful.
It was more so to do with the fact that I had to like lay flat on my back and keep my legs stretched out. When I get tattooed personally, like it makes me want to curl up into a ball and like scrunch myself together. And the fact that I had to lay like totally straight, and it was a dickhead who was tattooing me, like it was just kind of the perfect storm. So I don't know how much pain was related to the actual pain of the tattoo or just the whole experience.
Oh, that's what I was looking for. Someone said that, Miss Tattoo, Koch said, Miss Tattoo, piercing places being open because of the pandemic. Me too. I've been ready to get my septum pierced since the pandemic hit, and I'm just waiting.
Get some fake ones for now.
I do have, it's funny though, because my nose runs a lot and it'll come out and I won't realize. So I've almost thrown out like all the fake ones that I have.
Oh, no.
It's funny. But it's true. I should, I was wearing them on streams before. I should do that again. This is cute.
I saw a TikTok of a girl who makes like magnetic septum piercings.
Ooh, that would be cool.
Yeah.
I should look that up. Yeah, and I definitely want tattoos, but like I can't afford them right now, so it's fine, pandemic-wise. Everyone's telling Mo above the kneecap is gonna hurt.
Right on your kneecap is not
I
fun.
can't even imagine.
Yeah, no.
I want to get a full sleeve, and I don't know if I'm gangster enough to get my elbow done. Sorry, I tried to find a different word.
The ditch.
Well, both actually
is like apparently the worst.
Ugh. Yeah, I know. It's like, no. Koch, I am not on TikTok, but it's like I'm getting closer and closer to it every day. I went on there.
At all?
No, I'm not, because I know that I'll be on that shit all the fucking time.
Yeah, I said the same thing. Then I joined it, and now I'm on it all the damn time. And I don't care. It's enriched my life.
I don't care. I do have to say, so I went on there to try to find something, and it turns out you can't, like, I don't think you can search on there without an account, but I was really into all of the, like, crafty and, like, art stuff, like people, like, showing their artwork and stuff. I was like, oh, this would be really inspiring. And I'm like, bitch, you have so many ways to procrastinate. Do you really need to make looking at other people's art another reason you're not doing your own? But it does seem like it, yeah, I can see like how it would be like a really cool thing. So I'm like, I'm probably going to break down at some point. My other problem is that whenever I really like an app, then I feel like I have to make stuff for the app. And I'm trying to avoid.
I'm a full-on lurker.
Yeah, I need to get into like lurker mentality and be like, you're fine.
Yeah. It like, honestly, I feel like it got me through the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah.
This is comforting.
It is very comforting.
And
even just scrolling through that, like, oh my God, I know.
It's like
people sent me so many and that's the other thing is like I want to be on like, you know, queer TikTok because I've seen so many of them and I'm like, the kids are amazing.
Yeah.
So funny, so creative.
I remember when I first got TikTok, my little sister was like, so are you off of straight TikTok yet? Has your algorithm changed yet? She's like waiting for it.
Has it changed yet?
Oh yeah, it's golden now. It doesn't take too long to kind of like algorithmize to your interest.
Oh my God. That's how I have started to feel about YouTube. I feel like it took, I mean, not the same, but I feel like YouTube took a while and it's pretty good now. But then I'll open it and I'll be like, what is this? Like, I thought we were past this point. It's like, you don't even know me. I get so mad.
I just have never been on YouTube, really. Like, I've never been a YouTube gal.
I was not for a really long time, and I honestly don't know what actually got me onto YouTube. I can't remember. It might have been veganism. It honestly might have been from getting to know Maureen, because she had her YouTube channel at that time, and that's like how we met, because we were both like going to conferences and stuff for our platforms, and I think maybe I started watching her videos and then discovered media analysis, which is like what my YouTube is, like almost all people talking about different media. Or I follow a few people who just talk about like pop culture in general, and that's where I get like my news, because I'm like, I have no idea what's going on in the world, but these kids can keep me up on some of this stuff. Like I watched D'Angelo Wallace, if anyone watches him, and I feel like he has all the like, yeah, he just like reports on stuff, and I'm like, I don't even know who you're talking about, but at least now I know what the kids are talking about. Yeah, but it's like Instagram has always been really good for me. I feel like I've curated it really well, so it's just stuff that I really like a lot.
Yeah, I love Instagram.
I do too. It's not as great as it used to be, but it's still so good.
Yeah.
And I hate that, like, it's owned by evil people. And I hate that those ads are so fucking good. They always get me. They always get me. I forget what it was the other day, but I was like, how did they know? How did they know that this is exactly what I want to click on right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mo sends me a lot of TikToks. And they're great. I love them so much.
My sister, before I got TikTok, so my sister's 10 years younger than me, and she's the light of my life. She's amazing.
I love how much you love her. It's just so wholesome.
She's like just so perfect to me. She's so cool. But she, like, right before I got TikTok, she was like, millennial culture is sending TikToks, but through Instagram. And I was like,
shit.
You're right.
It's so weird that millennials are becoming old. Like there's like an active generation right now who's like, oh, that's so millennial, and you're like, wait, no, but we were the babies for so long.
Yeah.
This is like the first time I realized I wasn't the youngest person in the room at work, and I was like, oh my god, it's happening. Because I was always like, I skipped a grade in school, so like I was always just so much younger than other people. Like I was always younger than other people in my class, and I got my first desk job when I was like, I feel like I was 17, but I don't remember if that was legal or not. So I was either 17 or 18, but you know, like I started working in an office and everyone's like an actual adult, and they're like, who is this like fetus who has a job here? So I was just the baby, and everyone doted on me for so long because I was much younger than them. And then, yeah, it was weird to start realizing, like, oh, I'm not the youngest person anymore. And now I'm, like, almost always the oldest person. That's fucking weird.
It's a trip, yeah.
It is a trip. It's, like, fine.
Mostly. Are you
Exactly.
sure?
I'm telling myself it's fine. I think the problem is when you don't feel old, then it's like, it's weird. I mean, I like that I don't feel old, but it also makes things strange because then you have these weird moments where you're like, is it bad that I'm like on level with a 25-year-old right now? And like, you know what I mean? You start to wonder, like, am I immature? Am I missing something? But I don't really care that much.
Yeah, I think age is just whatever.
I feel like aging changed markedly with, I think it was like maybe at the cusp of like Gen Z and millennial, and like definitely with millennial. I just think like we age differently than the generations before us. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact of like the economic environment we've grown up in, you know? Because I remember when I was a kid, people who were 30 were like 30. Like they were like fucking like blazers with like shoulder pads in them, moms. Like they were like adults, and they like went to bed early, and they did not know new music, and they didn't watch new TV show, or like, you know what I mean? It was like very much the like, what are the kids doing? I don't get this stuff. And then for me, and I think the people I've grown up with, like we still listen to current music, and we're always up on like, we may not know what like the children are up to. Like Disney, I have no idea. I don't understand any of those people. You know, so there are genres of things where I'm like, that's like kid stuff and I don't know. But like I'm up on like general happenings, you know?
Yeah.
Which is just so different from like how grown-ups were in other different generations.
It's so
I think it's like we all kind of feel like we're not really the age that we are because it doesn't look the way that like we had it modeled for us that it's supposed to look. Yeah. And mostly I love it. I just sometimes I'm like, oh, I just don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the Steve Buscemi meme, basically, is what I'm getting at. Hello, fellow kids.
Or there's Schmidt on New Girl, I think. He calls them like youths.
Yes.
I always think of that.
Oh my god, so relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, honestly, I even talked to some people, like when I work with Raven Corps, some people who I think are still in high school, and I'm like, yeah, we're like vibing, and
Yeah.
it feels normal, you know? And honestly, I think it's actually probably a really good thing. Because I think it's social media too. I think it's easier to kind of stay plugged in with social media than it was back in the day.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, I always thought my mom was so cool because she like still listened to new music. And I was like, no one else's mom listened to new music. It was like really cool, you know?
I always wonder that, like, with when my kid gets older, like,
oh my god,
is she gonna be like rapping along to Megan Thee Stallion with me, or is she gonna be like, Mom?
why are you listening to this oldies music?
Yeah.
Okay. You would, yes, this is a conversation I wanted to have with you. So I have been thinking about, like, I had to stop myself from reciting TLC, What About Your Friends, to open off this episode. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, so much of that music from the 90s, like, still slaps. Like, it still holds up. I think you could play it today, and you'll be able to hear a little bit that it's dated, but I feel like it still is, like, good and relevant. And I was like, is that actually going to be considered, like, old? I just feel like oldies music is so specific. And my mom always used to tell me that growing up. She's like, well, the stuff you're hearing on the radio now, like, that's going to be on an oldies channel someday, so think about that. And I'd be like, shit, you know? But now, like, being older, I'm just like, I don't know if that's true. Like, I don't know if it'll ever be considered, like, oldies. I think it'll be like, oh, 90s music. Like, okay, it might be, like, a genre. But I'm like, will it ever be considered, like, classic in the way that, like, the Beatles are classic and, like, Creedence is classic, you know? I just don't see a lot of our music ever getting that kind of, like, timeless, authentic quality to it.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I remember the day specifically when my sister was like, I was listening to Justin Timberlake, and I was like, oh, such good, like, nostalgic music. And she was like, who's this old guy, like, in this old music? And I was like, like,
that's so weird. Yeah,
it's so weird. And on TikTok, there's like this whole area of TikTok where like there's young people and then their parents or like siblings, and then they'll like a playlist of songs will start playing from like the early 2000s, and then you stand on one side of the screen if you know it, and you stand on the other side of the screen if you don't know it. And all these little kids like don't know like Britney Spears or like Christina Aguilera.
What?
And I'm like, that sucks for you.
It does suck for you. They're going to have a renaissance. I know it, because the kids are discovering a lot of stuff right now, and that will definitely be part of it.
Bless them.
Because that's like part of why I watch Showgirls, is because like that's had a renaissance where people are like discovering this older weird movie and watching it and being like, oh, this is like so campy and fun, you know? Yeah, because I do think like the divas of the early 2000s, like, they're timeless. They have to be. We have to listen to Mariah Carey forever. I mean, she was 90s, but still. But like Christina and Britney, come on. They changed the industry.
Beyonce.
Give them their due, children. Learn your history.
I know.
Yeah, but it's funny because, like, even talking to you, you didn't know Showgirls, and that was such a big fucking deal for, like, my generation when it came out, because it was, like, I think it was one of, if not the only NC-17, like, blockbuster movies. So, like, all the kids my age were like, how do we watch this movie? Right? Like, how do we get our hands on it? And it was the kind of thing, like, if your parents saw the DVD somewhere or something, you were in trouble because everyone knew that was a naughty movie. Yeah. So, yeah, it's just so funny that, like, even that, you're like, I don't know it.
Me and my boyfriend were talking about Dirty by Christina Aguilera last night, and how, like, when that video came out, like, it was crazy. Like,
yes.
People were just like, oh my god, scandalous. And now that's just like...
People are having, like, actual sex in music videos now. People are like, oh, what, because she had, like, a bare midriff, you were losing your mind? That was, it was kind of, like, a little bit pre my actual generation, but that was, like, have you ever seen the Paula Abdul Cold Hearted Snake video? Fucking classic. Look it up. Pull it up. Add it to your watch list right now. No, it's so good. And that was like a huge pearl clutching video at the time. And that song still slaps, by the way. And then I was trying to think, like, a lot of what Janet Jackson did back in the day was like, oh my goodness. Yeah. And then now you're like, oh, it's not even a big deal at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find this is another confession, like my live music confession.
Oh my god.
I really, like, I have trouble listening to music or watching shows or movies if they're made before the year 2000. I just have, like, no patience. I'm not really here for it. Like, I'll do it, but...
That's so funny because I feel the same way, but it's about, like, the 90s. Maybe like with a few... Yeah, before the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, people are always talking about, like, Citizen Kane and shit, and I'm like, no. I'm like, I just can't. I just don't care. Like, old Hitchcock and all that. I'm like, I know it's, like, fucking art or whatever, but it's old. I don't want to watch it.
I just, like, have no attention span for it at all.
Yeah, that's fair.
My boss recently, like, she's making, like, an at-home office, and she was talking about, like, how can we make the office environment comfortable for you? And I literally just wrote no 80s music.
That's so funny. It's so specific.
I'm just over it.
You're over it. Oh my god. I am dead. Yeah, Mohira, like, yeah, I want to watch, like, I don't think I've ever seen Breakfast at Tiffany's, and it's, like, theoretically I'm open to it, but then when I try to physically sit down and watch something, I'm just like, I just can't.
Same. Yeah.
I think I need to date a film buff who, like, because I'll watch a lot of stuff if I'm, like, hanging out with someone who really wants to watch something, then I'll be like, okay, like, it'll give me enough motivation to give it a chance. That's how I am about war movies. I fucking hate war movies so much, and it's such a huge genre, and dating, like, cishet dudes, it's, like, all they want to fucking watch. So, like, any war movie I've seen is because of a boyfriend.
Dating a film buff sounds like my worst nightmare.
Right?
Like, I just wouldn't do what I don't do.
I mean, I wouldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
There's a list of hobbies and interests that are deal breakers. Please review this checklist, sir, and submit it back to me.
Yes. I love the dynamic of my relationship with my boyfriend because I really care about what we watch and he does not.
That's great.
So it's perfect. It works out great for us.
That is great. Oh my god. Wait, Andy, who called who crunchy? Andy says my worst nightmare to date a war buff. And honestly, okay, can we just talk about from like a radical leftist perspective that I think that's a fair deal breaker? Because anyone who's like into war is always into it in this like very romanticizing that era, romanticizing like the military and war itself. So like I feel like it's legit.
Yeah.
Wait, who's MCR?
Oh, Mechanical Romance.
Oh, okay. I do know who they are. Yeah, I flirted with like, what was that called? Like emo pop? What was the genre? There was like such a genre of that, like that came out at the time. Because there was like pop punk, which I was very into. And then there was the more like emo stuff, which I like appreciated, but I wasn't like as into it. I was very much like a Blink-182 type of person.
I never got into that, like any of that side of music growing up.
I wonder, I feel like there's some stuff that you would like.
I got into Taking Back Sundays, one album that they had, because like my friends were listening to it, but that was like all my friends had emo phases, and I feel like left out of the nostalgia because I'm like,
Aww.
I don't get like that pounding heart feeling when a Blink-182 song comes on. But like Sean Paul, I'm like,
not Sean Paul. God. Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, the thing that I get the most probably into is the, it was like the pop hardcore scene with like Korn and like System of a Down. Like I still fuck with System of a Down big time. I really like them a lot. And then like on the other end of the spectrum, also Ani DeFranco was like a big, like her stuff comes on and I'm just like transported.
Aww.
But I think like interestingly, it is actually a lot of probably the 2000s music that I also get like very nostalgic for, even though I guess technically like it should be 90s music that I get nostalgic for, which I do too. But yeah, basically, if you ever want to get me to dance, which I typically don't do, take me somewhere where they're playing like 90s or 2000s music and get a couple drinks to me.
Was the best.
It was really fun.
Music. There's nothing like it.
There really isn't. It's just a magical time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm missing out on good movies. It's just one of those things where you're just like not very motivated.
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm like I don't feel like there's anything missing from my life when I don't watch classic movies.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like with TV shows, I'm kind of like I can understand why I'd feel like I missed out in this like TV show everyone's talking about. But with movies, I just don't really care.
Yeah, I only really get motivated. Like, I think that I watch a lot of media analysis. So if I see my faves are all talking about something, then I feel like I have to watch it.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it too. Why, like, for me, a lot of the focus is on more like media made over the last few decades, because that typically tends to be what they're focusing on. And it's like a big nostalgia thing too. Like going back to the 90s is nostalgic for me. Anything before that feels old.
Yeah.
You know? So, which is like same for you with like the 2000s. But yeah, we'll see. Someday, maybe I'll watch some stuff. earn my, especially now that I'm going to have a media analysis channel, I keep thinking about that. I'm like, am I going to have to go to film school? Am I going to have to like watch, you know, these movies to have my street cred as like a film critic? And I'm like, no, I'm just going to talk about how shit Matthew McConaughey is. Oh, Mohira, I used to be a big anime person. I watched Parasite somewhat recently, but I just keep rewatching Cowboy Bebop because I'm a poser. Oh my god, Nahan, yes. So this is such a fucking pet peeve of mine. And that's always like, especially if you're into something nerdy, that's such like a fucking nerd thing to do, is like we all have to sit around and just quote stuff. And I can always only paraphrase something. I can never remember the exact quote. And it's just like really annoying. And I'm like, can we discuss like the themes and stuff that happened? And people are like, no, we're just gonna say our favorite quotes all the time. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia came out when I was working at this hotel as a banquet server. And we all watched it. And like every shift was just everyone saying like notable lines from that week's episode over and over again.
I couldn't get into that show.
I love it, but I'm like very critical of it. And I could totally understand why someone wouldn't like it. Did you watch when Danny DeVito was in it? Because I think he didn't join until like the third season, maybe? Second or third season?
I don't know what I watched. I just remember
didn't like it.
hating the fact that the Charlie guy yells when he talks.
Oh yeah, then you're not gonna like that show.
Fucking bothered me.
Yeah. Oh, Charlie. But yeah, I just hate that, like, so here's a story for you, Ari, this, my ex, sometimes, I don't know if he still does it, but sometimes he internet stalks me, and then he leaves weird messages on stuff under a name that I don't recognize or know. And I didn't know he was doing this. And then when we like briefly got back together, oh my God, it's like 5 to 7 years ago. He said something that I was like, that's from like a blog post I wrote years ago. Like, how do you know that? And he was like, oh, no. It was worse than that. So it was, he quoted a comment I made on someone's website. And I was like, how do you know that? And he's like, well, I just searched the internet for your email address and I can see like where you've commented on stuff. And I'm like, whoa. Anyway, so the point of the story is he left comments on a blog post I made way back in the day when I had a blog. And he's like, confessed that they were him. And I'm like, why did you do that? Like, I didn't know who you were. What was the point? And he's like, well, it was a reference to Cowboy Bebop. Like, you would have gotten it eventually. And I was like, no, I wouldn't have. Because it was like some obscure, weird reference. And that's just like how things would go with us, where it's like, I don't have the same kind of memory you do. Like, I don't remember things from media the way you do. And that's really annoying to me. Like, I hate when you tell someone, oh, I like this movie, and they're instantly like, line from the movie, and you're like, no.
Oh, I know. I used to have a friend who did that with lyrics all the time to songs, like songs I would know, but like I wouldn't just like he would just like text me a lyric to a song, and then I'd have to like Google it if it was a little bit out of context to see if it was a lyric or if he was actually saying something.
That's
and
annoying.
I'm just like I'm not gonna just know that you're quoting a song. I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah. Yeah, that's similar to like what my ex, like the kind of things my ex would do to me, where it's like, oh, this should be so obvious that I'm like, quoting this thing, and it's like, well, it's out of context for me, and so it's not obvious, and now I have this weird feeling like maybe I should know this, but I don't know it for sure. And now you've put me in this like strange emotional position where I'm like,
and it kind of makes you feel stupid.
yeah, I just feel like it's some kind of weird controlling like power move. I'm not into it. Andy says, I noticed that happening in my current relationship. I'm doing an EP. I made a song called Heartbreak Kid. My partner brought up the movie without mentioning they looked through my phone. Not cool. Yes, I would say you should be concerned. My ex used to do stuff like that. Like one time I came home, or I guess we must have been home, but one time he got mad at me because I had my ex's number in my phone. Because, like, my ex and I were still very, like, on friendly terms. So they're, like, sometimes we would message each other. And it was, like, my ex from, like, a while ago. It was my high school sweetheart. And, like, we broke up when we were kids. And it was, like, very mutual and just very much, like, oh, we kind of just grew out of each other. Anyway, so, yeah, he got mad at me. He's like, why do you have this person's, like, number in your phone? And I'm like, because they exist, like, why shouldn't I? But I was like, how do you know I have that person's number in my phone? And they made up this, like, wild story about how they were thinking about getting a new phone, and they were thinking about getting a phone like my phone, so they just wanted to kind of, like, look at my phone, and then it was unlocked, and then they accidentally saw in my contacts that I had this person's number, and I was like, bro.
Also, like, whoever updates their contact list.
Thank you.
No one.
And for the record, this is, I could go on so many tangents right now, but I never delete anyone's number because I want to know if these fuckers are trying to get a hold of me.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I always keep everyone's number because I'm like, yeah, if you're like trying to reach out, like I want to know that it's you.
Yeah.
And this is where I don't know if it's one of my exes or maybe multiple. That Scorpio pussy is real. It's like dangerous. But I get these random texts sometimes from people whose number I don't have. And they'll just be like, hi, Nicole. Or hi.
No,
or they might like ask a question. And I'll always be like, hey, I don't have your number. Who is this? And then they never respond. And this has happened to me like so many times. It's happened like a handful of times, but it's like weird because I'm like, how do you have my number and how do I not have your number? Because I keep everyone's number.
Yeah.
Exactly for this fucking reason. And then, especially when they say like, hi, Nicole, because it's like, okay, this isn't a wrong number. Why would you say that and then not answer me when I'm like, who is this?
Because it's a shot to their ego.
Yeah, but it's also like, you must have a new phone number if I don't have your number. So it's not like I deleted your number. It's like, you must know that you've gotten a new number since I've talked to you last. So like, why are you being weird? Yeah. People are saying it's so exclusionary to be, yeah, that's how I feel. It's like you have to like, it's another way, honestly, because I feel like it's a very like masculine way to consume media and like hang out. And it's another way to kind of like gatekeep who gets to belong and who doesn't. And that's the big thing in like nerd communities is like, oh, are you a real nerd? Like, can you quote this whole thing from heart or are you just a poser? And it's like, I've got big juicy titties. Just let me hang out. Shut up. Just say thank you for my presence and stop. I've had that so many times when I'm like, oh, I like video games. And guys are like, like, what do you play, Animal Crossing? And it's like, well, first of all, yeah. Second of all, I also play other stuff, like, but, like, why are you trying to gatekeep me? Why wouldn't you just be like, oh, cool, like, what kind of games do you like?
That's like the whole thing with music too. Like
Yes. Oh my God,
I
music
always used to
snobs.
wear I always used to wear like metal band t-shirts, and no, I never listened to any
Uh
of the bands.
oh.
And guys would be like, like name 3 songs, and I'd be like, fuck no, it's just a cute shirt.
Yeah,
Shut up.
I'm just cute. I just like the aesthetic.
I look hot as fuck in this shirt. That's all that matters.
See? You should just say thank you. Thank you for wearing that shirt.
Like, what does it even matter? I
I
just,
I don't know. I really
I,
don't know. I've read a lot about like cuz like Captain Awkward, who's like a blogger I love that I used to talk about a lot. She's a nerd, and so she's done a lot of kind of work around like nerd psychology, and just like, a lot of it is like, I don't know, like I feel that I'm outside of what is popular and acceptable. So I've run to this other community that's built around being different. So like I can't handle it if someone who is like more mainstream is into my thing, because then my thing isn't like different and giving me like a sense of identity anymore. And that's like a big
wow.
part of it, is like maintaining that like community and like individuation, which is so funny because it's so homogenous. It's like none of you are actually like individual at all, but they think that they're so special because they're into this thing. So yeah, if like a hot girl is into video games, then like video games aren't this like rite of passage that you've had to earn, and it like makes them all mad. Where it's
Ugh.
like, or we could just be finding ways to like connect with each other, and you could grow your social circle, and that would be fun.
I can just think of so many examples like that. Like, just so many, like, tattoos are the same,
Yeah, totally.
like, style of tattoos. Like,
Mm-hmm.
ugh. So what word I say?
Ugh. Yeah. And I was going to say, too, just like music snobs in general, I absolutely cannot stand. I cannot
No.
stand. That's on my list of like, if I think you're a music snob, we can't be friends. We can't date.
Yeah.
I think like policing and judging and like gatekeeping around something so just joyous as music is just
Yeah.
disgusting.
I one time had this huge music snob tell me that Beyonce would be nothing without Jay-Z.
What?
And like I saw red. Like I was just like, back the fuck up. You're out of line. Cause he
Wow.
hated pop music. He hated Beyonce. He
Yeah.
did like Jay-Z, and like he just
Funny
would.
how that works.
So funny, right? Yeah.
Misogyny much.
And
Yeah,
I
no, I
was
had a roommate like that. I used to throw dinner parties and like game nights, and being the aspiring DJ that I am, I would always make a playlist, and I was very particular about my playlist, and I loved the music. And yeah, I was throwing this game night one night, and he literally came into the room and shut off my music because Beyonce was playing. And he's like, I won't have that shit in my house. And I was like, my earrings are about to come off. What the fuck
I
did
would
you just do?
I'd pick myself out. I'd be like, bye.
Bye.
Boy,
I'm a
bye.
victim. Yeah, boy, bye. Yeah, and I was like, wow. And he was very much like that, like total music snob, and was like very into like that like 60s, 70s kind of like Credence Clearwater, whatever. I call it dad music, and I'm not into it.
Yeah.
But it was very much like, oh, this is like classic, like actually good music, and everything else is shit. And it's like, you know what? No, it's not. Like, I'm sorry, the shit that's been done in pop music is fucking amazing. And
It's
even when
pop
it's not,
for fucking
even when
reasons.
it's just
Popular.
fun, yeah,
Yeah.
like, that's cool too.
Yep.
Yeah, Beyonce definitely made it before she got with Jay-Z. Like, that's part of why Jay-Z probably married her, because she was already established.
Listen, I got so mad at this guy when he said that. He was like, I was at my ex-boyfriend's house, and it was one of his friends, and he was supposed to stay there for the night, and I like started arguing with him, and he left. He left at 2 a.m. in the morning and just
My
went
God.
somewhere else to sleep because he couldn't stand the thought of like me arguing with him about pop music.
Wow. Fuckers.
Yeah.
See, your significant other's friends, that's a whole thing too.
Yeah.
Yeah, dad music. Yeah, I think the only music from that era that I got into was The Doors, and I was like very into The Doors. I also like James Brown, and it's like very problematic men making music.
There's definitely like my dad was always listening to Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, AC/DC, and so I still love like AC/DC when it comes on and Led Zeppelin because it's like so nostalgic.
Aw. Yeah,
But
my dad was like the Beatles, because my dad was very, he's very, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, it's just very funny. Like when I would listen to my music, he was like, all of these people are drug addicts and gangsters and whatever. And I'm like, you listen to the Beatles, you fucking hypocrite. Just he's so mad.
God.
But he had this like idea of like he used to listen to Bing Crosby
Not at Christmas.
and like Frank Sinatra and stuff. And I'm like, you're gonna talk to me about the people that I listen to, and you're listening to those fucking rapists and gangsters? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But yeah, because I had such a bad relationship with him, that music was always kind of like not interesting to me. Although I can rock with some Bing Crosby at Christmas. I could do that. Oh my God. He's dead to me now forever, but my dad found a Marilyn Manson CD in my room once. Oh, that was not fun.
Oh wow. My dad like loves Marilyn Manson.
What?
My dad's kind of an emo, but like
Oh,
it's so
so
funny.
your dad just sits alone in his room listening to like, that's
Evanescence.
amazing.
He loves
Oh my
Evanescence
God.
and like any kind of like those. Yeah, he's just like, this is like good tune, Hilary. Like just listen. And I'm just like, you just push all your emotions down, and this is the
Yeah.
only way you can express them. This is just you not being able to be vulnerable.
Through early aughts emo music. It's amazing. I
My
really
sister
love
got
that.
really into 21 Pilots, and then my dad got really obsessed with 21 Pilots. Yeah,
Wow. That's super cute.
it's strange.
But yeah, I think back to like what you said before, I'm not going to have kids, but I do wonder just in general, like if I have some nibblings around or whatever, some honorary children, yeah, if I play stuff, like how will they interpret it? Like, will they interpret it the same way I interpreted my parents playing their music
No.
or not? Like, if I played you Rage Against the Machine, are you seriously going to feel about it the same way I felt about, like, the Beatles? Maybe. You know?
Yeah.
It's so weird.
It is weird.
Yes, Korn and My Chemical Romance concert reboot. I love it. I'm sorry, I still listen to, shit, I'm blanking on the album name, but the two first Korn albums, I still listen to those. I tried playing it for my mom once, and my mom was into like Alice Cooper, and she was into like AC/DC and Led Zeppelin and stuff. But she was like, "Oh, this is so angry," and I was like, "I'm a teenager. I am angry."
I just listened to rap when I was like from grade 6 on.
It's funny. I actually grew up because the area I grew up in was like, it was like a city, so it was like my neighborhood was the high population of Hispanic and Black, and so I grew up listening to like a lot of rap and hip hop and R&B. Like oh my God, like SWV and TLC and Salt and Pepper and like all the stuff. It was just so, like, to me that's like classic like kid nostalgia music.
Yeah.
And then that was part of when I moved up to New Hampshire. New Hampshire is so fucking white that like that was nowhere to be found up there, and I just felt so weird, just like, oh wow, I'm really in like a different culture right now.
Yeah, none of my friends listen to hip hop either.
Oh really? How did you get into it then?
I don't know, to be honest.
Because for us, it was like one of the main radio stations. That's what it was. So it was very like,
oh my God,
kind of everywhere.
We still don't like. They don't play rap on the radio.
Oh my God. Are you
like
serious?
they'll play Drake, like the popular stuff, but they no. Yeah.
Okay, Dave, yeah, I thought that first two Korn albums were self-titled and Life is Peachy. I almost said Life is Peachy, but then I couldn't remember if that was like a song or the album. Yeah, I just had a weird journey with music, and a lot of times I was kind of, once I moved out of Massachusetts, I was sort of like, since I was so isolated, a lot of my music was just kind of my own thing. So I went through a power ballad phase. Like, I loved a Mariah Carey, belting it out. I was here for it. I loved a Whitney doing her thing.
Dion.
Celine Dion, I never really got that into. She was a little too cheesy for me. You had to be a little bit cool. Like, Whitney was cool back in the day. Oh my God. Like, Baby Tonight is still one of my favorite songs ever. Just fucking so good. And I feel like it's a song, again, you can put on today, and it's just like, this song is so good. And then I got into like my pop punk phase, and then I joined this feminist group, and that's when I got indoctrinated with Ani DeFranco, because literally everyone kept talking about her, and I finally was like, fine, and I bought a cassette tape. This is how long ago this was. While we were out somewhere, we went to some cool like music store, and they had a cassette tape of hers, so I was like, fine, I'll give in. Because I'm a feminist, this is required listening. But then I fell in love, and I really, really still like love her so much. Although it's like, she's one for me, it's like more her earlier stuff and not like things she's done in the last 10 to 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think Andy has a question for you. I don't know if you see that.
Yeah, I'm just reading it. Like, how is it navigating the tattoo community that already exists? Is that what they mean?
Yeah, Andy, can you maybe add a little context?
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Old white people are the worst. That's how my dad is. And it's been really interesting kind of like reprocessing childhood stuff with like modern context, because my dad, amongst many things, was also very racist. And so when I would try to watch like In Living Color or Martin or any of the like black shows, he would like yell at me and force me to turn it off. But he was a huge fan of The Cosby Show. And now as an adult, I'm like, interesting. I'm like, because not only is he a rapist, but also he was like, very well known for like basically policing. It's like, what's the word for it? shit, I can't remember the phrase for it, but basically like telling the Black community how they should behave in order to get respect. He
Yeah.
was really like, that was a big part of his platform back then, was like telling kids to pull their pants up and like telling everyone they had to be educated and like speak a certain way. So I'm like, oh, it's not surprising that like that's the person whose media you allowed me to consume.
Right.
And yeah, I've had such a difficult relationship with that because the Cosby Show is like my ultimate like childhood comfort show. And now I can't even watch it. It sucks.
Oh.
Okay, so Andy said, yeah, and trying to get into a new industry with a lot of ethical debate. I'm doing my portfolio and it's kind of unnerving to get an apprenticeship.
Oh, yeah. It is. When I actually first started doing hand poking, um, I I started getting a bunch of messages from random accounts, just like telling me I was like fake and I like just bullshit like, oh, I bet your inspection papers are fake, and like just like people who didn't like that I was trying to do things a different way and wanted felt territorial. I'll bet that it was local tattoo artists. I'm just gonna take a wild stab at it. Um, but it's very daunting for sure. But the industry is changing, which is so amazing. And you can even like message me on my account and I can like share with you so many tattoo artists and people who are pushing the boundaries and just creating a whole new world of tattooing. But just don't put yourself in situations where you're uncomfortable. Like, trust your gut. And I never did an apprenticeship. I just am self-taught hand poker, so I can't speak to that. But I know there's a lot of controversy in the tattoo world about how like a lot of old school tattoo artists don't think that self-taught tattoo artists are as good or should be allowed to be tattooing because they didn't go through like the hard work of an apprenticeship. But an apprenticeship is it's not made for marginalized people or people with low income. Like the tattoo industry, mainstream tattoo industry, is racist. It's bullshit. I could talk about this for forever, but there are so many people forging new paths in it. So I just feel like I'm so hopeful, and just make sure you stick to your own guns and don't like let up for anybody.
Aw.
And people will come to you. Like, I was so surprised. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I have imposter syndrome every day. I'm like, I can't believe people let me fucking tattoo their bodies. And every day people are like, I'm just so glad that there's a safer space to come get tattooed in. And every day I'm like reminded of how much it's needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was, my experience after having these like somewhat negative experiences with my tattoo artist, is like I wanted to specifically try to seek out someone who had a platform of being like, want you to feel safe here,
Mm-hmm.
Like I was like, I want to find like a queer, like femme or female tattoo. Like I just was like, I really want to go look for that and read what people have written and see like, is this a space that's focused on making me feel safe? So yeah, I think like there's such a demand for it. And I think like the harder in your area that it is to find an apprenticeship trying to do what you want to do, probably the more it's needed in your area.
Yep.
I would imagine, because to me that sounds like established people are not providing that type of service. So it sounds like you're in a good market to provide it.
Yep. It is a hard industry to get into.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel very fortunate that I'm hand poking. Like, I feel like that's a lot easier to be self taught when you're doing that than it is machine work. Um, it's a lot easier to just pick up a single tattoo needle and just have friends that are willing to try it out. Machines are a little more daunting.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's difficult.
Aw, thank you, Andy. Well, I'm having so much fun. This has been like cheating almost because I get to hang out with you and I get to hang out with everyone else. You know, it's like I love hanging out with you. And then there's other people here. But I know you have an impending storm, so I want you to get home safe.
Yeah, it's gonna snow soon, so I should pack up.
Yeah.
And my back is killing me. Oh my god.
I know, mine is too. I know. I get, because I can't really like lean back, so my back gets really stiff by the end of these things.
Yeah.
So just thanks for coming today. Maybe we could do some kind of tattoo episode at some point.
Yeah, even like shorter ones that like you did on Thursday.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I think that would be really cool. So, yeah. But get home safe. Thank you for coming. Yeah, thanks everyone for being here.
Yeah,
and I should have done this on the main episode, on brand. But next week is the big Valentine's Day Sex in the Patriarchy stream. So let me be your Valentine. And we'll talk about sex. And it'll be great. All right, everyone. We will see you next week. Bye.